Hello, and welcome to Mind Your Head, a space for people to share their stories, talk openly and honestly about their own mental health challenges, and to give some listeners some comfort in knowing you're not alone. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we record this podcast, the Gubbi Gubbi people. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Indigenous peoples. We honour their enduring connection to the land, waters and culture, and recognise their invaluable contributions they make to our communities. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Welcome back to another episode of Mind Your Head. This week I'm joined by the legend himself, Keegan Hipgrave. Keegan played for the Gold Coast Titans and the Parramatta Eels in the NRL before being medically retired due to ongoing concussions. Keegan shares his truly inspiring story and the reason why he channels all his energy and experiences into advocating for mental health through his incredibly influential podcast, Keegan Company. This was one of my favourite chats. He's a true gentleman and one of the most genuine human beings you'll ever meet. Now let's get into it. Keegan, welcome to the Mind Your Head podcast. A bit different, not on the sunny coast, down in this really nice studio down in Burleigh. Really appreciate you coming on today.
Mate, thanks for having me. We've been trying to line this up, so I'm glad. I'm glad we've made this work. But hey, beautiful day here on the Gold Coast.
Beautiful day.
Love these big comfy chairs. Like, you know, we get those chairs that it's just like you're ready to just settle in.
I had that feeling when I sat down here, and I was like, I could just chill out here the whole day.
100%, man.
Yeah. So, like you said before, like I've been so pumped and excited to do this with you. I've been such a big fan of yours. I actually remember you debuting.
Really?
For the Titans, yeah.
You'd be one of the only few, mate.
No, because I remember sitting around with some of my mates, and I mean this with the most utmost respect and admiration, but I remember watching you debut, and I was just thinking, what a maniac.
Yeah.
Like, what an absolute maniac. And that's the thing, I was so jealous, because I couldn't play footy the way that you played footy.
Right.
At all.
Yeah.
And I just remember going, this kid is going 100 miles an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lifetime ago, man. It feels like
Does it?
Yeah, man, 100%. It feels like that's a different part of me, or like a different personality. Like, and you would get it better than anyone because like you've played it, like you get it. But I have like this real, or I had this like real competitive, like nature about me, which obviously came across like super aggressive, right? Like, and so
do you like that part of you?
Yeah, well, it was fostered and nurtured throughout when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So I like that from a football rugby league because it's obviously such a brutal, violent game.
Yeah.
So I think you needed that. And I think, to be honest, if I didn't have that, I don't think I would have played NRL. I don't think I would have gone on and played professionally.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't that skillful. But yeah, to your point, like that's because I remember that game. I was only supposed to play like 10, 15 minutes. And then we had a heap of injuries. It was at Sydney against the Roosters. And ended up playing like 60 minutes for the first one. And I remember like Jarrett, Maria Hargraves, I remember just like wanting to go after him. Like, I'm like, he's like the big dog. I'm like, I'm going to get it over him. And he ended up just like wrist-holding me, man. Like, and it was...
Yeah, but you kept coming. Me and my mates were calling you the little pit bull. Because it was just like, you wouldn't give up.
Yeah,
like the whole time you're going 100 miles an hour. And I was like, you're not out there to hurt people. But at the same time, you're out there to...
No, I was out there to hurt people.
Yeah,
100%. That was the forefront of my mind, was to hurt the other team. Like, and it's so weird now, like talking to mates, even like when we're in it, because you're obviously not that person off the field. And a lot of my teammates, or even people in other team, they're like, what's Keegan's deal? Like, is he sweet? Like, is he just...
Is he all good?
Yeah, is he all good? Like, he's out of control. And they're like, nah, like Keegan off the field is just like, the complete opposite, right? It's just like how we are now, right? Like,
and that's the thing that I've noticed, even like when you started your Keegan and Company podcast and sort of getting to know your story a little bit through your podcast and listening to the way you talk. And I remember just like, I couldn't put the two and two together, like watching you play and then seeing you are off the field. Let's go back to sort of your journey playing rugby league. Was that always the goal growing up, and did you come from a rugby league family?
Yeah, like everyone like loved Origin. Everyone loved rugby league. Dad played a little bit growing up. Yeah, it was always, we played a heap of different sports, man, to be honest, like similar to you. Like we like surfing, surf lifesaving, water polo, rugby league. I tried soccer when I was a kid, and Dad's like, you're too brutal for soccer. We're getting you to play rugby league.
I had one season playing soccer.
And then you were the same.
And the coach was like to my parents, yeah, that boy there,
Yeah.
he needs to go play rugby.
Yeah, for sure. But and to be honest, like I was a bigger kid, so I had a lot of success growing up. Did all the rep teams. It probably wasn't until I think I was probably like 17 where I thought I got offered a contract with the Brisbane Broncos. It was 4 years.
Did you grow up on the Gold Coast?
Grew up on the Gold Coast,
perfect,
but I did like all the junior development stuff with Bronx just because
Yeah.
they still do have one of the best like junior development programs, and I wanted to be around like the best. And my parents wanted that as well. They wanted me to have really great coaches. And so when I got offered a contract for 4 years, I was 17, and I was just like, wow, that's insane. Like that's going to be my next 4 years. Yeah. That was probably the switch where, like, don't get me wrong, you always want to go. You have these goals. Like I wanted to play for Queensland and play for Australia. I had all these like little micro goals, but it was never really like something that you could actually feel because you couldn't see it. And then once that contract came through, I was just like, okay, well, this is going to be me for the next, hopefully, like 10, 15 years.
Yeah, right.
So that's the point where I was like, yeah, I'm dialing in.
So was that the point where you realized like I could actually make a fucking living
yeah
out of
yeah
this?
you like you sort of always have that little
Yeah,
inkling where you do the rep teams. You know, I got to captain like most of the sides that I was in. Even like playing like Australian schoolboys. We did a 6-week tour over England and France. So you sort of know you're in the mix, but like NRL seems so far away because there's so many guys who you look up to and you're like, oh, well, I don't know if like it sounds nice. Like I would love to do it, but it's never really, you never really feel like you can until you actually see the contract.
Am I on that level and stuff?
Yeah, for sure.
And you look at the stats, it's like less than 1% make it to the NRL.
Mate, and even if you do make it to the NRL, it's like the average games is 46 games or 43 games or something. And that's like 2 seasons. You might be in a system for like 8-10 years, but you might only get to play a handful of games. Yeah,
that's
so
wild.
It's wild.
So where does your drive to make it come from? Is it the environment with your friends growing up? Is it something that's been instilled with you from maybe your family, your parents?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I like to be good at whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so I think I had success at a younger age when I was playing rugby league. So I think that kind of ticked things on a little bit, and that was kind of a driver.
Yeah.
And to be honest, probably more recently, probably comes from like a feeling of like not being good enough, like not feeling like I'm good enough. And I've learnt that probably in the last like 12 months, where I've saw it in like other stuff like outside of rugby league.
Yeah.
But I think growing up, I never thought I was like skillful enough. I never thought like I was a chubby kid. So I've probably struggled like a little bit like socially and like intellectually as well. Like I had like a lot of learning difficulties.
Yeah.
So there was always this thing of ticking over. It was just like, oh, you're not good enough. And probably trying to prove to other people, but more so probably trying to prove to myself that like, man, you're actually like, you're capable of doing things. So I look at like training now, like obviously I've got like 10, 15 years of training under my belt. Like I'm confident in my training. Like we could go out, like yesterday we ran half marathon just because, right? Like, and going to the gym, like people talk about how it's hard to go up and get after it. That stuff is easy for me. That's fine because we've done it so much. But if you ask me to like study or the intellect, the academic side, that's what I really struggle with because I don't have those reps under my belt.
That foundation,
For sure. Yeah. So when you talk about like studying psychology, which I'm studying now, and I'm keen to talk about that with you like later on. But that's a hard thing for me, man. Yeah. Like sitting down after a day's work and putting in a couple hours of study or trying to learn concepts, that doesn't come easy to me. And so I'm constantly trying to figure out like, no, you are capable of doing these things, you know? It's
so funny because me and Jordan, my fiance, we have these chats all the time because we are polar opposites in terms of what we are interested in. So she says the same thing to me, like, oh, how the hell do you go to mines for the whole week, train the whole week, come back, do all your training this whole week, do the podcast and stuff? And I was like, that's easy. Like I'd love that. Yeah. I was like, I don't know how you study so much. Like she's in the hospital, cardiac scientist. And she said to me,
it's impressive.
Yeah. She said to me, she goes, I miss uni. I go, why do you miss uni for? She goes, I miss the lectures. I miss the studying. I miss doing assignments. And I'm like, I went to a sports school.
Yeah.
And that last year of year 12, I decided to go into the army. So I was like, well, stuff doing an OP. If I'm going straight in the army, I changed all my subjects. Yeah. League, union, AFL. I did swimming classes in the morning. Like my whole year 12 was like the best. And then
must have been fit, mate.
Yeah, well, I was fit, but like I couldn't do study.
Yeah.
I was like, but psychology is something that I'm really interested in. And Jordan, like we chat about it all the time. And she's just like, it's just doing the reps. Like if you don't do it, you're not going to be good at it. So don't think you're going to go in there and like study for 2 hours and just go through it. Study for 10 minutes and then just build up from there.
Your partner sounds very wise.
Sounds
very smart.
She's 7 years younger than me too. So
but
she's wise beyond her years.
Yeah, but that's the thing with anything, right?
Yeah.
Like you could copy and paste that to any situation. Like you're going to be shit when the first time you start something. But if you like get the reps in, like I love this analogy of like layers of paint that build a mountain, right? So I look at a podcast, say, or like the mental health space for me, right? Every action, every little thing you do is just a layer of paint. And you do that for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. You've got this big, beautiful mountain of this like really impressive thing. It's like the overnight success, right? Like people think you're an overnight success after fucking 10 years. So that's why I love that analogy, because it's like, you know, you start doing psychology, you're learning, you're getting like a legit thing of actually knowing how to explain things properly. You've got the podcast, you're having these really great conversations, you're normalizing mental health, you know, you're also out in communities. So all these little actions are just building up. And then you look back and you're like, oh my God, like that's why we're so good, is because you've done the foundation and it works.
And people often don't see that side of it. They just see sort of the end product, and they don't realize all the hard work that actually goes into it.
For sure.
Do you find that with your studying and your psychology, has it gotten easier? I know you said that you find it hard to study after a long day. Has it gotten easier the more you've...
It does. I did, my mum, she is a school teacher, so she was very pro-academic. So when I was at Bronx doing my under-20s competition when you're semi-professional, I did a Bachelor of Business, and then moved on halfway through an MBA, and then put the MBA on pause to do this postgrad in psych. So like I know how to navigate university, but it's still hard, man. Like that's what I mean. And then especially coming into psych, because I had maybe a year off study or 2 years off study, starting it again was a hard thing, because you're sort of getting back in the swing of things. Like, oh my God, how do I take notes? Like, how do I actually learn? Like learning how to learn. Yeah.
And that's a skill. People don't realize learning how to learn is a skill.
We did a podcast over in the States with Alexi Coffey. She's VP of product at Whoop. Very impressive. She had dyslexia growing up. Oh, right. And we had this really cool conversation about learning how to learn and like increasing cognitive load. I'll tell you a little bit more about off air, but like she'll do all these things. Like she'll read all all the content, get like a really great understanding of the landscape, and then she'll like start picking it apart in her brain. Like that's the way she works. So it's almost just like over consuming. You're not going to know everything, but you'll start to understand the whole landscape and you'll start making sense of it.
And it's almost knowing how you learn, because everyone learns differently. Everyone processes information differently. So it's like finding your own style and how to absorb information the best that you can.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But yeah, like to answer your question, it was hard. Yeah, it was hard to get back into it, but I think I'm in a little bit of a routine now. Like I'll time block like every part of my day, and I've got it in like study at like it's like 5 till 8 o'clock every night.
Are you strict with routine as well?
You
need it.
Google Calendar, like Microsoft Calendar. Like if I don't have that thing, I'm gone. And so I'm so anal with it. There's only one, like I might duck in for a sauna in between just because I still want to
break it up a little bit.
Break it up. Yeah.
Just going back with the with that rugby league journey, how do you think playing a team sport sort of shaped you as a person?
There's just so many qualities, right?
Yeah.
There's so many qualities that you get out of it, like learning what works for other people, knowing that like leaders are great, but followers and other players are just as important, because you could have the best leader in the world, but if no one buys in, then it doesn't work. They're probably the two main ones. Like being around like something's like, you get it. But like being around mates is pretty.
That camaraderie,
special.
it's the best, isn't it?
Yeah.
I could never play an individual sport. I just love that. I don't know. I love that team environment. I've always worked well in teams.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've sort of brought into the podcast too, because I've got a bit of a team. By team, I mean unpaid interns.
You and me both, brother.
Yeah, and I love that part of it. And even going back to what you said about, sort of routines, and you have these sort of blocks and of where you study, and you've got your sort of schedules and stuff. How have you gone about setting boundaries? Even as a young kid? I remember I was 16 and we had a Queensland Reds player come into our club and talk about, if you want to make it, these are the things you got to sacrifice. Like you got to set boundaries. if you want to make it, you're going to miss out on birthdays. You're going to miss out on going out with friends. You're going to have to say no to friends. You're going to have to maybe leave a friends group that aren't aligned with what you're doing or aren't driven or have the same sort of values. How have you gone setting boundaries? Because to make it to the NRL, you would have had to set a few boundaries and make a lot of sacrifices sort of off the field.
Yeah, if we're talking NRL, 100%. Like that's just like, if you don't do that, you're not going to make it. Like it's honestly as simple as that. And we both would have had mates who might have been like the best players growing up, but they don't go on and kick because they don't have those boundaries. Yeah. And that's what I put it down to. I think it's because I wanted to play NRL so badly. Like that was I put everything into it, man. Like since I got that contract, I was like, I had this really like bizarre thing where I was like, I wanted to make my NRL debut before I was 20 and buy my first house before I was 20. That was my 2 goals, and I don't know why. Actually, I do know why. It's because Corey Parker, captain of the Bronx, played Queensland, Australia. He was like my idol growing up.
Oh, was he?
Yeah. And so he bought his first house at 18 and made his NRL debut when he was 18. So I had this thing in my head where I was just like, oh, well, if he could do that, if I could do it when I'm 20, then maybe I'll be half the player he was. Oh, right. Maybe that was
the weird thinking pen.
And so and it got to the point where of course, missed birthdays, like overtraining training to the point of overtraining, was doing way too much. And to be honest, it probably was to my detriment a little bit, if I'm being completely honest, because I had a bunch of injuries, end up tearing my hamstring like 10 times, 5 times I was crying on the phone to my dad saying like, I think I want to give this away when I was like 19.
4 tears.
Yeah. It was 5 tears, 2 in the tendon and 3 in the muscle. And it's like, this is when I'm 19 and I'm been pushing for like a year, 2 years trying to play NRL. Yeah. Think you're like somewhat making it close. And then, and the thing is with like hamstring, it's like, it's not like an ACL where it's like you're done, you're out for the year. It's like you'll tear it and then you'll do all the rehab, you'll do everything you need to do, return to run process, tear it again. And then, okay, we'll push the recovery time out a little bit longer. Let's do a little bit more, tear it again. What are we doing wrong? Okay, let's go back, reassess. We went to the AIS. We're talking to the best like hamstring specialists in Australia because obviously Bronx have a lot of cash. And
yeah, we all know that.
Yeah. And I just kept tearing it. And then the 5th time, I remember one of the senior players who I really looked up into in the side, he's like, mate, if you're a horse, we'd shoot you. They're like Wayne's the coach. He's like, Wayne's just looking for an excuse to get rid of you. Like it was footy banter. Yeah,
footy banter, but that still would cut deep, wouldn't it?
He got me in such a vulnerable state, and I was like already on the verge of tears as a 19-year-old. I remember I actually have a journal entry of it. I read it like a year ago.
So you were journaling back then?
Yeah, I was journaling back then. I love that. Yeah. So I had this journal entry of like what they said, and then 2 guys, Jack Reed and Lockie Miranda, I forgot about it until I read it, but they like gave me a big hug afterwards, which was really nice. And they're good friends now, which is cool.
I think Reedy used to live around the corner.
Yeah, he's a good man. Yeah. And so it was, it was a super that challenging period where I was probably like overdoing it. It probably wasn't until like I ended up moving clubs to the Gold Coast Titans for a whole other set of reasons. Still wanted to make my NRL debut. They had a bit more spot in the roster back home. Friends were playing there and training there. So I did, like I got to make my NRL debut at the Titans that following year. But it was like we talked about like setting boundaries. Like I think I needed to be on the other side where it's just like the non-partying and that stuff was fine. But more so of like actually training and like not overtraining. And I reckon that's probably the thing I think about most today. Like I reckon I have this thought daily is like setting barriers or setting boundaries with like too much work or like too much training. Right. It's not so much the party stuff. Like that's easy for me. I can, and that's just me personally. Cause I like yourself, there's other guys, other mates who have, struggled with like different alcohol and different drugs as well. But my thing is working and, probably overdoing it. That's where I probably need to be better at setting boundaries.
And that's hard too. It's hard to recognize, all right, I've done enough here. Yeah. I need to take a step back. Otherwise I'm going to do more damage.
But how do you look at it? Because you obviously like you spend your time over in the mines, right? And then you come back and then, you want to spend time with your partner. You've got your podcast, you still want to train. Like how do you go navigating that space?
It's difficult. It really is. Yeah. Like I don't want to say lucky because, there's a lot of hard work that goes into relationships. It's not just luck. Like, you know, I've had my mates, I got 30 good mates that I went to primary school with, that I went to grade 1 with. So we've known each other.
Say 30?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, like
that's wild.
It's not good when you got a wedding.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah.
We got a wedding next year.
Wow.
So we've got our friends group is about 30, and we've all gone to the same school. Some of us have gone to preschool together. So since we were 5, 6, 7 years old. So I'm blessed in the fact that I can see them every now and again, and it's nothing's changed. People have got kids. People have got other priorities that, and they're okay with me when I come back doing my priorities, really. So they're just like, go to your podcast. Like, I had a mate, he's like, what are you doing this weekend? I was like, I'm going to Goldie this weekend. He's like, what for? I got a recording. They're like, sweet, I'll catch up when you get back.
See, that's nice.
So I'm very blessed in the fact that I've got a very supporting partner. Like, the mines is difficult. Like, I'll be honest, people ask me, like, what's it like being at the mines? And it's like, I don't like mining.
Yeah. I
like what it gives me. I work 4 months of the year.
Yeah.
I only work 4 months, and I get paid really good money to work 4 months. So that's amazing. But in like 1 week on, 1 week off, take your holidays. It works out to be 4 months a year. So when I come back, I really thought me and Jordan were going to struggle, just because being away for so long. But because we have that finite amount of time to be with her, every time we're back, I'm like, all right, date night, we're doing this. Whereas before we were a bit more blasé, catching up with friends was a bit more blasé because it was always tomorrow. Yeah. But for me, I got 7 days. So I'm like scheduled in, recording, podcast stuff, date with Jordan, seeing mates, catching up with mum and dad. Like I've got something on every single day, and I love that.
That's a beautiful week, man.
I love it. And I prioritize all the people that I want to see. And then before you know it, I'm out at the mines again. Yeah. And then that's it. But you do got to sacrifice sort of, missing birthdays and.
But that's natural, man. And there's always going to be people who like want your time as well. Like that's a natural thing. Like people can we go for a coffee, or like I want to pick your brain about this, or even more so like family. Family is one that I really struggle with because I love my family so much, and I want to spend time with them. And mum's always like, look, I'll like come over for dinner. Like no stress at all. I know you're busy, but like we got dinner this night. And I was just like, got to stay back at like for uni this time, and there's like so many other things. And so like same as you, I schedule it in, and while it might not be 5 nights a week, it might just be 1 night a week, which is I'm fine with.
You just do what you can do.
But also like I'll also like my socialization is training.
Yeah, same.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think we were having this chat last time you came up. It was just like if I'm like every day I've got something on, like whether it's a like run club, speed session, lifting, swimming, sauna.
Speed session.
Speed like running, like it's intervals like for running. Not the speed. But
no, I thought I know what speed you meant. You can cut that out. I was like, Keegan's getting quicker.
No, I'm definitely not getting quicker. But I'll just tell mates to come in with that. We went like P3 this morning, recovery session. I'm doing that anyway. Like Elliot, we'll go to a set, and it's great for us to catch up before the podcast, and it's really good. But even like yesterday, did that run. There's like 6 of our mates there. Just come for a run.
That's what we do too.
Mate, it's the best.
Gym.
Yeah.
You want to catch up? It used to be catch up at the pub, watch footy.
Right.
Now it's like, let's go get my mate's got a home gym. He calls it the kiln because he's got no air. Cause the kiln when you're hot, when you make clay, you put clay things. We call it the kiln.
Such a left field name, man.
He calls it the kiln. I was like, because it's so hot in there.
Yeah.
Doors closed.
Little sweatbox.
Little
lock in.
And you just get it done. Yeah. And I love that evolution of sort of our hangout of friends is just like, same thing. Go for a surf, go to the beach, go for a run.
Right.
So they're all the things that I love to do anyway. Go for a sauna, cold plunge. I love doing that anyway.
Yeah.
So that's how I sort of get that socializing with my friends and family pretty much.
I think that's the best way to do it, man.
Let's go back to the to your NRL days. When you sort of made your debut, what's the environment like with the 30? Was it 30 alpha males in the team? Like, what's it like? It's being a young kid, being 17.
Yeah.
You know, was it hard finding your feet in there? It?
Yeah. Of course, man. Like you go, for those who are listening and don't know, it's just like 30 man squad. high testosterone, alpha males who's putting shit on each other, taking a piss. Like, you couldn't take that environment and put it into a work setting. Like,
you'd be going to HR.
You go HR, you'd be illegal. Like, mate, it was like, and it's so funny. Like, some of the stuff is just like, you get it better than anyone, man. But as a 17-year-old coming in, of course, and especially because it's like, these are guys who you look up to. These are guys like we talked about Corey Parker, a lot of guys who are playing like Australia and for Queensland State of Origin, and like these are the guys who you want to be like, right? Or that type of like where you want to get to. So I can, for the first year coming into the Bronx, like I didn't say a word. Like,
oh really?
But I was you're so nervous, especially because I was younger in the squad as well. Like, and a lot of my mates, they were training in the under 20s comp, and I was training up with first grade, but then just dropping back to play in 20s. So I was like the youngest there, and there was probably like only one other kid my age there, and everyone was just like 20s, 30s, and so I was just so uncomfortable. But it forces you to grow up really quickly.
Yeah, it does.
And to be honest, and then like after like a little bit, you get to know them, you become mates with them, you know,
and you find out they're all kids.
You find out they're all kids anyway, but like that's a maturity thing that just comes with age, and obviously like you want to feel a little bit more comfortable in yourself. It's just a time thing. Yeah, and that was like, it's just learnt, to be honest. But yeah, man, like coming in, for me, it was a little bit daunting. But then like, it probably actually wasn't until a couple years in where I feel like once I was like genuinely myself, like I felt so much better. Like, cause I would come in with like, to be honest, probably like a little bit of anxiety looking back on it now, where it's just like, I don't want to say the wrong thing.
I don't know who to be. I don't know what to say.
Am I good? Like, are they like me? Do they think
should
I'm
I
a
speak
good
up
player?
and say anything, or should I just shut up?
I've got blokes telling me that I'm not wanted, that my hamstrings suck. Like,
so put me down.
Put me down. I'm like, oh god, this is such a wild. Yeah. But it does. It breeds such a tough skin, and I reckon the best thing that I took out of the footy environment that I took into everyday life is just the ability to be able to have hard conversations.
Oh right.
Like I'm very not comfortable, because a lot of the times there's some hard, like tricky things to say, but I'm very comfortable about navigating tough conversations, whether that being with mates, employers. Like, I remember when I sat down and left a job that I loved, I was so nervous, but I had to sit down and pretty much like talk to them about like how I was feeling and all this stuff. But it was just, I could just able to do that. And I think that comes back to doing like tough conversations with coaches, because coaches are spraying you and they're like, well, why the fuck did you do this? You were shit here. And you're like, actually, no, this is why I was doing it. And so it's always a bit of a pushback. And so that was a learnt skill. So, I feel very comfortable having conversation, even like on the podcast. Like, I'm sure you're similar in sense, like you obviously build like a really comfortable environment for them. But a lot of the times you're asking like some pretty tricky questions, and you want to be able to navigate that well. So I think a lot of that comes from rugby league and being in that
I feel
system.
the exact same way, because with people listening, the conversations you have with the coaches, 9 times out of 10, they're not the greatest. You know, sometimes they might give you some sort of praise, but most of the time they're just absolutely rinsing you in front of everyone.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you have any stories of getting rinsed, like getting peppered?
Oh mate, so I joined this club, and I just thought like, it was my first game for the club, and we did a video review session, and I did a couple of good things that I thought would have outshone the couple of bad things.
Yeah, man.
First video session, I was like, oh, he won't rinse me because I just started. This is my first game. It'll be good. First, got the clicker out. What the fuck are you doing here? I was like, man. I was like, I slipped off that one. And he was like, because you got your head in the wrong position, all this sort of, for about 15 minutes.
Just roast you.
And the next clip, me. And I'm just like looking around. I was like, what the fuck?
Anyone else in this team?
And then someone else gave me a thing, and he was just like, don't worry, mate, it happens to all of us. And I was just like, all right, I've got to be better. But it breeds tough skin.
It does, man.
You know, like tough conversations, and I feel the exact same way. I'm very comfortable at having uncomfortable conversations, whether it be during the podcast, whether it be disagreements with people. Yeah. You know, I don't lose my cool at all. I kind of embrace the challenge of we're seeing something the complete opposite, and not try to convince someone to see it my way. Yeah. It's sort of like, this is how I see it. All right, you explain how you see it. Yeah. We find a common ground. And then that's it. There's no like, I don't know, people, when you disagree with someone, it's always like, oh, you don't like that person, you know, and it should never be like that. No. I embrace that we all have different perspectives or outlooks on life, and we see things differently.
I completely agree, man. I completely agree.
Your debut. Let's talk about that, because I mentioned at the start, I remember watching it. What was it like finally debuting, and even that feeling during the week? I don't know how early you got told that you were debuting, but realizing that like all that hard work, all the hammy tears, all the setbacks and sacrifices you made as a kid and growing up were all going to be,
Mate,
I don't want to say worth it, but
I can give you like the really inspirational like answer, and I can give you like what actually happened.
give me the Wayne Bennett and then give me you.
Mate, it was what? So like, yes, hard, best moment of my life. Like one of like top probably 5 like best experiences ever. Not just that day, but the 10 years leading up to it, right? All the hard work, all the injuries, all the things, you know, all the things. Got to the Gold Coast Titans midway through the season, was training really hard, was back playing, was back really enjoying my footy. Thought there could be a chance to debut. Was getting to the back end of the season, was playing like reserve grade. And then it sort of got to the point where it's just like, oh, there's like a couple games to go. Probably not going to play. The week prior to the last game for the Gold Coast Titans was our last game for the reserve grade. And so we had our reserve grade game. We did our Silly Sunday, our Mad Monday, big drinking culture. And it was wild. It was so much fun. But we still come in on, I think, the Tuesday to train against the first grade team, keeping in mind that our coach, Neil Henry at the time, had just been given the sack, so we had an assistant coach as head coach.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so this is the landscape. So I come in, so we have this, like, I think Mad Monday belter. Like, me and a few of the boys went from the club into training. Like this, we're in our kit. Like I've sunnies on. I'm rolling in down the hallway,
just reeking too,
smelling sunnies on. And I remember, obviously a little bit of GST on it. and so I walk in. The assistant coach is like, "Keeks, like, come on, I want to have a chat to you." And so I'm walking in. Assistant coach Craig Hodges, who I really look up to, he's just like, Keeks, like, gave me the little spiel of like how well I've been training and whatever. I was just like, just want to let you know you're going to make your NRL debut this weekend. And I was like, and he knew. I was like,
am I still pissed?
I was just like, oh, and it was this really weird scenario, because like this is your dream come true, right? Like this is it, and you're like obviously like still half cut. And I was like, well, I better sober up, like I better get ready. And then obviously like you get right, and it was fine, and did a really good training week. We had a really good game against the Roosters at the time, who were going really well. We almost beat them actually, and they were going into the semis, I believe. But that feeling, like all my family were there, like
all my friends,
like my friends flew down from the Gold Coast for it. There's this photo of like all of us like standing out, and like even mates. There's a photo with like Kane Elgee and Kevin Proctor, who I also really looked up to. So there was like all these really fun moments. Probably got to play more than what I was expecting, and just those like coming in after the game, and we lost. Like it was fine, but we played really well, and we're all sitting around, and we're just like, it was just that feeling of being in there with all these people who you train with, but you also look up to, and you're like feeling like I finally did it. But then so to answer your question, it was a wild experience. But then you always look like, oh, what's next? Like
that's the thing. Once you get there, it's just like, all right, I'm here. I'm one of them. I'm finally one of them. Where do I go from now?
For me, it was I wanted to cement my spot in the team, which I did that next year. Starting back row, I played the next year or 2 years in that starting position, which like was a goal. And then had a bunch of head knocks, man.
We'll go into that.
Which we'll talk about. But like the goal was just to be a consistent first grader. That was the plan.
How did you prepare mentally for games? Because I looking back on how I played and during sort of my career, it was terrible for me. I function off a lot of confidence, and if I didn't have confidence, I would play like shit. And it was a lot of performance anxiety and that sort of thing. What really I struggled with is if I looked at the opposition, and you do your research, you do so much like prep before the game, who you're playing. If I knew that they were a rep player, I would just go down mentally for some reason.
Gotcha.
But if I didn't know them, if I didn't know what they did or who they played for, anything like that, I would just play free and play how I'd like to play. And then after the game, they're like, that dude was playing, he played for Australia last year. I was like, oh, fuck, did he?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, shit. And I was sort of going to my shell a little bit. It took a lot of time for me to just to like let go of all those sort of anxious feelings, all that almost performance anxiety, and just be free to play how I like to play without fear.
Shows how much the mental game plays a role in it, right?
Massively. Yeah. How did you prepare mentally for a game? Did you have any...
Evolved over time. Okay. Young, an absolute idiot. And we spoke about before, naturally already super aggressive and competitive. So I would be listening to like the biggest like headbanging music, like Limp Bizkit, bloody all these things that would just get so pumped up. But then I'd lose like all my energy in the first 5-10 minutes, right? And that it wasn't sustainable, and it was silly at looking back on it now. Like obviously hindsight's a beautiful thing. Like if I could go back and change a few things, 100%. But no, it took a little bit of time where I actually started meditating.
Did you?
Yeah. We did we had this little core group of maybe like 6 of us before like training sessions. We'd go meditate or meditate before games.
I love that.
Yeah. And then probably it was maybe like 3 or 4 years into it where I sort of flipped the switch. So instead of listening to like really heavy stuff, I'd sort of like cruise out and be listening to like Ocean Alley and which is what I listen to when I'm not on the field. You know what I mean?
I did the same thing.
So like fully just zenned out. Sticky fingers, man. We're very aligned, brother. And it's just like it was just a way to like really cool it down. So my state that I wanted to enter an NRL game, I wanted to be as relaxed as possible.
Same.
I wanted to be like free, flowy, like
I played off no emotion. I didn't want to play off any anger or anything like that.
But that'll naturally come in though. Like you still have that thing where you cross that line. You're still like, don't think we're playing soft.
Oh no,
mate. My suspensions were still very high, man. But it was just that state of being able to like probably control it a little bit more. But that obviously comes.
It's like calm up here, but a weapon down here.
You get it, man. 100%.
How did you deal? It's something that I talk about with my friends. Like I got some mutual friends with like Christian Welsh and that sort of thing, and I chat to him about it sometimes too. It's just like rugby league, and obviously all sports get this, but rugby league in particular, the online hate and abuse that occurs is insane. I don't understand where it comes from, why it happens. And I just think, imagine going to someone's work and just your shit and that sort of thing. How did you deal with it? Did you ever experience it, or even the people that the players that you played with? Did you talk about it as a team?
I didn't get a huge negative feedback, to be honest. No real ones that really stand out. But to be honest, like I was conscious of that. Like I'm not looking at comments. I'm not reading. Not reading fan pages. And to be honest, purely because I didn't really give a shit like what other people were saying. However, I do know I have a lot of friends who would like bite, and these are like marquee players, like $1 million players, right? And they'd be like going through the comments, like replying, or like they might be doing, and these are really like gross comments, what people would say, like talking about their partners, talking about their kids, illegal death
comments,
threats, like talking about their kids. It's like, it's gross. And so naturally you're going to arc up about that. But that's what they want.
They want that.
That's what they want. And so you just can't look at the comments. Even now, like putting stuff out on the podcast page, things like, and I don't read it. We had this one clip of a friend who went like wild, and like thousands of comments, and like I'm not reading it. And we're on the run yesterday, and she's just like, "Oh, have you read some of the comments?" And she was telling me about. I'm like, "You can't read the comments." I was like, "It's not going to it doesn't help you at all. It doesn't help anyone." She's like, "Oh, but they said this." I'm like, "It's just not it."
Yeah, and the people that are writing it are coming from it's like almost a reflection on them.
For sure.
You know, they're lonely. They want attention.
Yeah, we had Brisbane Lions reach out. Girl called Dakota Davidson.
Yeah, I listened to that one. Yeah,
she's like very masculine. Like she's an incredible AFLW player, and she copped a lot of online abuse. She cops abuse like in like when she goes out. Like she obviously got the shorter hair, like a bit taller build, and so like when she's out in toilets, like she'll go to the female toilets, and like some girls are being like, get out of the bathroom. She's had a bouncer like ragdoll her out of a club or something because she thought she was going into the different toilet. Like
really,
mate, wild. Like even people some guys have been thrown out of stadiums because they've been like heckling her. She's copped it, man. And so, but she's like a knock around girl. Like she acts like it doesn't affect her. And so when the Lions came, they're like, we want to educate our male audience. So would you be keen to do the podcast? And I know Dax. I've known Dax prior to this. I was like, of course, would love this. And so we just went and sat down like this, had a really amazing conversation. But then we got to the point where we started talking about the like what people were saying. And man, I got goosebumps thinking about it now because she's just like, she was for the first time potentially, like she was just so open about it. She's like, it's just so consistent. Like it just doesn't stop, like at games and then at clubs and online. Like I just can't get away from it. And it's like really just ugly comments. And she got super emotional in the episode. But then she's like, I make a point of like, if I go see a younger girl with a short haircut, like I'm the one who's pumping it up. And I was like, I love that for you because you are influential in your community. So when she talks about that so freely, it makes it okay for everyone else. And then having someone like the Brisbane Lions, like air that to everyone else, like the response we got back from that one clip was incredible. And it was so much of like, hopefully you get these like typical, like, older guys who are like very much stuck in like their old ways, hopefully try and change things and try and like move the needle and shift perspective. And I think that's why like these conversations are so important because you got the ability to make genuine impact. Like how do we actually really move that needle?
Yeah, and that's what you mentioned then is that education. I think that's all it is that old generation, uneducated, throwing this hate. And the more we and she's doing an amazing thing that, you know, she's fighting that hate with that love of just inspiring that younger generation. So that when that younger generation grows up and the older generation sort of fucks off a little bit, it won't be all that hate anymore. There'll be more girls with short hair that want to play, you know, AFLW.
100%. And it's like pros and cons with everything, like with each generation, right? Like I take a lot of, like I like the older generation in terms of like being hardworking and really genuine and stuff like that. And there's bits and parts, and like even with the younger generation coming out, I don't know if it's social media, but it's a lot of like wanting things right now and probably a little bit more potentially entitled. I don't know, but it's there's pros and cons to all of them, right? Like that's probably a whole
tricky
episode in itself, man. Yeah.
Let's talk about your relationship with fear. My relationship with fear, as I mentioned before, really held me back in life. I despite the heights that I reached playing footy, I didn't feel I reached my full potential. I felt like fear honestly controlled a lot of my playing days. Where
in footy,
man, even outside of footy. So outside of footy, I was so focused on footy because I knew that I was good at it. So I was so scared to try something new because 9 times out of 10 when you try something new, you're shit at it. So I was like, oh, fuck that. I'll just stick to what I know I'm good at. So I stayed with footy, right? But the same thing with footy, with the higher you go, the more pressure. And then when they start paying you, the more pressure to play good, to get another contract or something. So I had this fear of like, almost a fear of success because I was like, oh, I'm so scared of what could be. And I know what couldn't be. I'll just move back to the sunny coast and pick up a job. And that was my safety net. So I was really scared of like what I could become, that I played within myself so much. I look back on it now and I'm like, oh, even though I made teams and I guess you could say that I was successful. I look back at it and go, fuck, I had so much more left. You know, what's been your relationship like with fear, even during your playing days and then outside of footy?
Yeah, it's a deep question, man. It's a deep question. No one's ever asked me that. So I tell you what, it's a good question on a podcast when like when the guest is like, oh, I've never been asked that question. Okay. Great question. I could look at it on two sort of levels, I think. There's like the physical level, where you play, you train, you're running into a brick wall. No issue.
Yeah, you'll do that
any
day of the week. Yeah.
Went through this phase of like skydiving and riding motorbikes. I think this adrenaline phase when I was like 16 to 22. So
I love that.
So silly.
Yeah.
But that fear off the field. Yeah, it's I think I was nervous of what life after sport was going to look like.
Yeah.
I think I was always conscious of that. I think that was sort of drilled into me from a young from being young from my parents. Like, I think that's why they encouraged me to study. I think that's why, like, when I was playing, I was always trying different things because I probably was aware that it's not going to last forever. However, when I always thought that I'd play into my 30s. You know what I mean? Like,
same 200 gamer,
yeah,
like do a couple of seasons overseas.
For sure,
like,
yeah. I'll finish my career in France, south of France.
Yeah,
I'll
might be a
sipping
commentator
wine.
or like going to coaching or something.
These are the natural. These are the natural things that
Yeah,
you think when you're young and arrogant and you don't know the world very well. But I think I was conscious of that, right? And so I was always doing all these different things just to try things because I think, and it helped, to be honest, because like knowing what you don't want to do is just as important as knowing what you want to do. I find that was really great. And so when I was 24, I got medically retired from rugby league, which I'm sure we'll probably touch on. But then like I still didn't know like what I actually wanted to do, but I knew all these things that I didn't want to do, and so. But I had this sort of idea of like helping people. Like I knew that was, and mental health, like that was always at the forefront. But there is 100% that level of uncertainty. Like I remember went through the whole thing with the neurologist and everything. And I remember sitting down with my coach at the time. So we're on a phone call, and it was the first time I said out loud that I was going to be like I was medically retiring from rugby league. And I remember just like being so like sad and crying and upset, and that following like couple weeks, even couple months, like it's like in this like little bit of limbo. And for me, like training is like my what's it called? It's like my coping mechanism. So like I look back in like the toughest times of my life, I'm always like the most fittest, right? So like it's funny way to look at it.
Yeah.
But I remember like just waking up at like 2 or 3 in the morning, just wired, being like, what am I going to do? You know, like I thought like this was going to be me for the next like 10 years. I was 24. Like I thought I was going to be in this.
I thought I was going to worry about this in a decade from now, not now.
And I just remember like, and even like I had a partner at the time, and I remember getting up, like putting my joggers on at like 2 or 3 in the morning just to go for a run. Oh, right. And she's like, "What are you doing?" And I was just like, "I've just got to do something," because it was a thing of like not doing anything. So I would like go to the gym or like go for like a run. I remember thinking, I remember running down Crumban Alley. And I still remember this thought. I was just constantly like, why are you doing this? Like, and it was a back and forth, but it was just because I just didn't know where I wanted to go. So that fear of not knowing, or that uncertainty, I think was huge. But to get out of it, like that's probably the next part of that question is just like how you get out of it. It was a time thing. Like I tried different things. And to be honest, like, while that was such a hard part of my life, it turned out to be one of the greatest things that could have ever happened. Like I think about this a lot. It's like I genuinely think that a lot of the times the hardest things that people go through, or for me personally, the hardest things that I've gone through always lead to a positive outcome. Lost one of my really good friends to suicide when I was 17. That sort of led me into the mental health space. You know, it led me into studying psychology, led me into the podcast, and it's, while it was such the worst thing that could ever happen, good has come out of it. Same with like being medically retired from footy. It sucks. It was a hard thing to do, but it's led me to do what I really love now. And to be honest, like I wouldn't change it. Respectfully, I don't want to play rugby league again. Like
I'll look at it, I'm like, oh fuck that.
It's brutal. So that fear piece, that was probably that time where it's a fear of not knowing.
Yeah, that's the thing. You talked about sort of getting medically retired. Let's dive into that, because obviously I've gone through my own concussion issues. I had a couple, sort of 15, 16, 17, nothing, not knocked out, but, a couple of head knocks. And my debut season over in New Zealand, I was 21, like pumped. Last game of the season, I made a break, was going to draw on the fullback, didn't see the winger coming on for my blind side, and he's just caught me fist around the chin, knocked out. And this was 2012, 2013, so like the concussion importancy wasn't as heightened as it is now. It was, trainer was like, "You good?" I'm like, yeah, like my vision was all blurry. Like I could hear ringing in my ears, and I was like, yeah, I think I'm good. All right, cool. Keep going. Yeah. Played the rest of the game. I thought we won. It was a semi-final.
Wow.
And I thought we won. And I was in the change rooms and they were doing like the concussion protocol thing. And I was like, why is everyone, didn't we win?
Yeah.
And they're like, we lost, we got flogged.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, fuck. And I was sort of like having this out of body experience where I was just like almost looking in on myself. And I was like, what the hell is going on here? I ended up getting diagnosed with post-concussion syndrome, which lasted 4.5 months. So I had to be in a dark room. I had vertigo. I had headaches, migraines, lost appetite. I was vomiting for 4.5 months. So I couldn't get out of bed. If I got out of bed, I had to slowly get up and then turn, sit on the bedside, and then if I got up like in a normal fashion, I would pass out. Yeah. It was just all the blood would rush to my head or something, and then the doctor was like, look, there's no cure for it. It's just time. You've got to limit all your sensitivities. And I was just like, so I couldn't watch TV, closed room, couldn't exercise, so I lost all this weight, and it got to a point where it was the end of my contract too, so the coach was like, we're happy to keep you here, but we can't re-sign you because we don't know when you'll be able to play again. And I was like, oh, fuck, righto. So then I had a specialist said to me, you should probably stop playing.
Really? How old were you?
21.
Far out, man.
I ended up playing another 9 seasons. Yeah. And I shouldn't have. I look back on it and I go, I definitely shouldn't have done that because they said to me, once you've had this big one, any other sort of minor head knock's going to feel like a massive one. And I was like, whatever, I'm 21. Like, I'm at the height of sort of playing days. Like, I'll be fine. End up, had a year off, kept playing, kept getting little head knocks, like little clips. They called me glass jaw or butters because I would just like get a little clip and I would just be out. End up playing another 9 seasons, stopped playing at 30 and then started developing. My fears were I was developing early stages of CTE. I was getting, my mood swings were really, I noticed them at 30, right? My mood swings, more headaches, fogginess, like tired. I was real like tired in the mornings. I could get a 10-hour sleep, 12 hours sleep, 8 hours sleep. I was just waking up tired. I think my mood swings were the worst. I was very irritated. I was a relationship broke down, I think, because of it. And I started, like I said, at 30, I noticed the difference. And I started going to see a psychologist about it, going to see some specialists about it. And they said, ask your friends and family if this is a thing that's come on, in the last couple of years, or when has it come on? And I asked mum and dad, and I asked all my best mates, and they were like, oh yeah, it happened when you had that big one. And I was like, what?
Really?
Have I been a dickhead?
Yeah.
For 9 years? And they were like, you haven't been a dickhead, you're just hard to talk to. And I'm like, why hasn't no one said anything? And they're like, oh, we just thought like, we know you have good days and we know you have bad days, so we just, we'll be tolerant on your bad days, and then when you're on your good days, it's all sweet.
Right.
And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? So when I was 20, they reckon that's when sort of my personality changed.
Right.
And that freaked me out.
Yeah.
So I listened to a podcast with James Graham. I think he did Head Noise. Yeah. And there's a concussion clinic down at Macquarie University down in Sydney. I don't know if you've
been there.
You've been there? So I went there, saw the specialist there, did some cognitive tests.
Levi?
As a lady.
It
was a lady there. I can't remember her name. She was really, really good. Did some head scans, and they're like, look, we can't see anything abnormal. We're not going to give you any of the sort of heavy, medications, because right now all your cognitive seems all sweet. But if you are experiencing that, that mood swings and stuff, and it's really interesting that they brought in now. She said the best thing for it is breath work and meditation. And I was like, that's so interesting that that's now a thing in medical practice is advising people to do, breath work and meditation. And obviously we talked about the hyperbaric chamber that I was using for about 4 months that I think really, really helped. What's been your journey with the head knocks? And I know we're
not going to move on just quickly.
Oh, we're not going to move on?
No. Because I have questions.
Yeah, go.
That was 3 years ago? You're 33 now?
Yeah.
How are you feeling now?
The best.
Yeah, why do you think that is?
Because I've really, really aware I wasn't aware before 30. I don't know what happened at 30. I've talked to people, your male brain, grows fully at 30. But at 30 years old, I was just noticed myself in situations where I was very reactive. I was very short-tempered. I would snap at people, and I was thinking like, why am I? I'll walk away, and I was like, why did I react like that? Like that's not me. And then obviously went through this whole process, and people were like, yeah, that's been you for 10 years. And I was just like, oh shit. So I think that awareness initially made me really proactive about things that stress me out, things that trigger me. So the things that trigger me is just a reflection of things that I'm not healed in. So there was a lot of inner work. Honestly, there was a ton of inner work of things that happened in my family, things that happened in my past that really triggered me, like road rage. Why do I get angry on the roads? Didn't think about it. I was a first responder 5 years ago where a guy died, and I was a first responder, and he was so badly injured that he was going in and out of consciousness, and I had to stay with him until the ambos got there. He ended up dying, and I found out the ambos were telling me that he was driving without a license because he had epilepsy. He was having epileptic fits. He rode off the road and almost hit me. And I was like, why do I get road rage? I get road rage because someone almost killed me because they were meant to be on the road. So there was a lot of things that happened during my life that have that triggers me and put a lot of stress on me. And when I don't do the things that I need to do to stay at a positive mindset, like training, if I don't train or do something every day, like Jordan will say, I already know because Jordan would be like, have you gone to the gym today? I was like, I have. She's like, have you done a cold plunge? I was like, no, I haven't. Go have a cold plunge. Talk to me in 10 minutes.
Gotcha.
And I'm like, oh, right.
That's a nice communication piece.
It's good communication. So it's having that awareness of like what I need to do to stay in a healthy mindset and also work on the things. When it triggers me, it's like I used to react, now I respond. So react is emotional, respond is, sort of logical in your head. So instead of reacting on the spot, because I've always been like quick to pull the trigger in terms of voicing my opinions. So it's just acknowledging those moments in the moment, not after the moment, but in the moment when you're triggered, or you feel like your mood swings are going the other way, or something's annoyed you. It's just taking a moment just to have a deep breath and really think about it. And what's also helpful for me is writing things down. So if something's pissed me off, I've always had trouble letting it go, always. So what I do now is I write it down. I write what's happened, what I want to say, and if I want to say it, if I want to bring it up, then I do. But give it a day.
Write it down first.
Write it down first. I give it a day, and I'm like, oh, it's nuts.
Yeah, I love that piece, man. I think the concussion and CTE conversation is so complex, I always say like I think lived experience is one thing, but I'm not professional on this. I don't have any background in neurology, neuroscience. I'm curious. So I think anyone who has had any sort of concussion or traumatic, like TBI, traumatic brain injury, curious and James Graham's a perfect example of someone who went down the rabbit hole of just wanting to learn. But it's such a complex issue, and I always say headlines travel fast and science takes time. We're still in this time where we're still understanding of what actually helps, what not helps. The science, while it's coming along, it's not all there. We don't know, but we can talk about lived experience 100%. It's funny because I'll circle back and talk about my stuff. But when I finished up, and I was talking to Chris Levi from Newcastle, I was just like, I can't change the last 10, 15 years of getting head knocks. And mate, I've had heaps when I was younger, when I was older, big ones, knockouts, variety of symptoms. So I can't change that. But what can I be doing? He's like, I was like, what is the difference between me now and the guys who are 40, 50, 60, who can't articulate their words, who are forgetful, who are irritable? What's the difference? And he's just like, this is all obviously very nuanced, it's all new. But his thoughts were, your stereotypical guy or person who was playing footy, obviously back in the day, it's just you get a head knock, you have a big game, you get on the piss afterwards. You know, you continue that mind frame. You might
it's almost a badge of honor back in the day.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
Even when we first started, it was always that badge of honor. But when they retired, they continued those habits of still drinking, drug abuse, maybe lack of community, training falls off, bad diet, and so it's like it's hard because the symptoms of concussion and CTE and TBIs very much mimics someone of a drug user, alcoholic, someone with no community, someone with poor diet, and obviously there's so many different variables. So I'm very careful of how I explain this.
Yeah.
So I said to him, I was like, I can't change it. Well, what can I be doing? And she's like, well, all the things, like not drinking, like not like limiting your drinking helps heaps. Diddy off the piss. So that was the thing. Don't take drugs, eat really well, good community, physical activity, learning new things. So all these like little habits and these little small things like build up over time. I'm not discounting traumatic brain injury at all because I've been it. I know exactly what it feels like and it sucks and it's hard. But I want to educate players and I want to educate people of like, well, if you are having memory lapses, like maybe because you're on a 3-day bender, like read the fucking room.
Yeah,
man.
it's a lifestyle thing, isn't it? It's a full lifestyle change.
And that's why I ask you, because I look at you, especially in the last 3, like you don't drink anymore. No. You train really well. Yeah. You're conscious of your body. You've got a great community. And so I look at someone who and you say, you're like, I'm so good now. And you've obviously, you've done a heap of the work. I love that you're doing the hyperbaric chambers. I love that you're doing all this, you're constantly searching, you're curious. But I look at someone like that who's just like, you're taking all the proactive steps. Whereas someone who might have had all these head knocks and they continue on this, and this is just and just preface again, this is just my personal opinion, but guys who have been on the piss forever and they continue after they get the head knocks, that has to play an effect. But everyone's different. Like you might have one head knock and you might have all the symptoms. Or you might have 10, 20 head knocks and not have any. Yeah. Everyone responds differently to it. And that's why it's such a complex issue. And we don't know, and you're not going to know the fact that if you do have CTE until you've done the biopsy once you've died.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they've said. Yeah,
you're right. And so it's such a hard conversation. But I emphasize because I see so many mates, people in that rugby league industry especially, who are coming out and they are struggling.
And that's the thing, you got to be curious about it. Like you got to want to find answers for it. Yeah. And I think for so many years, I wasn't proactive about it. I just thought this is how my life is always going to be. I may as well just go with it. Yeah. And like I said, I got to that point where I was like, no. Like I know I can feel way better than what I'm feeling. At least let's go find some answers and let's see how far I can get with it.
But like if you make your bed, you got to sleep in it, right?
Yeah.
Like to be honest, when I first started playing rugby league, had like the concussion CTE conversation wasn't brought up at all. Yeah. But I remember like when we went on that Australian tour, England and France for 6 weeks, it was an incredible tour. 5 concussions.
You did?
In a 6-week tour. I like it was like 4 or 5 concussions, 3 knockouts. Like it was we had 6 games. And these aren't like get a head knock or like a big impact and you just stay on the field. These are like walk off the field.
Yeah, you need help off the field.
You need help off the field. But there wasn't anything, and it was just like one of those things where you just got on and play with it. Even when I was like 16, there was this one who I'll never forget. The kickoff run, they kick the ball off the field. You got about a 40-meter run up before you like run into the other.
Just that force.
That was, mate, I remember running into a guy called Blake Leary. Who plays for, is he now? Dragons, I think. Big dude. And it was the hardest I'd ever been hit. It's not like we got pumped or anything, but we just both collided. Yeah. But I remember seeing white for 1.5 sets. Like we had the ball. I couldn't see. I remember being like, it was kind of like stars, but it was like my vision was just white. I couldn't see. And even my mate, he's just like, it's the hardest you've ever been hit. I was like, I know. And you stay on the field, you keep playing. And so there's like, and mate, similar to you probably. Yeah, like I could tell you 1,000 stories like that. But then, what am I going to do? Like, be bitter about it when I get finished up? I'm like, I can't can't change that. It was my decision to play all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's easy to pass on blame on anything. I was just like, it's not going to help me.
No.
I was like, what's actually going to help me? Like, it's all the things that I spoke about before.
Yeah. So let's go into your story.
Yeah.
So did you have, you talked about, I originally thought you just had a couple of bad ones. I didn't know that you had heaps leading up to it.
Mate, growing up, like, you said it, it's a badge of honor. That's what it was like. There wasn't any real like conversation about it. You get a head knock, oh, this guy's tough for staying out there. What a tough guy.
Yeah.
And then when you get into like the under 20 system, the semi-professional, professional system, that's probably there's a bit more of a view on it because everything's recorded. So that's when they start taking note of it. So in 2019, I had 3 probably big concussions that were all walk-offs. And that's when you go through, you do all the
protocols,
the testing, reaction testing, memory, what time of game is it, like who scored the last try, where are we playing, like memory testing, the whole thing. And so I went and saw the neurologist at the time. It's probably like best year of my career probably. And they're like, we want you to have 6 months off, give your brain a break.
Yeah, right. Was this at the Titans?
This was at the Titans in 2019. And so did the 6 months off, and it was hard because it's like you're feeling kind of sweet. I like obviously had the symptoms of like irritability, but I came back pretty good, bounced back pretty good. But they're like, you've just had too many. We want you to have a break. Okay, took it on the chin. It was fine. Fittest I've ever been, naturally.
So your training was fine for you?
Obviously, like from the last big head knock, it was a couple of return to train protocols, like smaller training, ease back into the gym. So that's all stuff was taken care of. I don't mean to skip over that, but it was all it's all done.
You were absolutely flogged. If you're not playing, you are absolutely flogging yourself.
Flogged,
yeah.
And then came back, fittest I'd ever been. Played that whole next year at the Titans. Played really well. End up moving to the Parramatta Eels to get an opportunity there. They were a top 4 team at that time. Wanted to play in a grand final. Going to a side, if I can play in the Eels at the time, this is like Regan Campbell-Gillard and Junior Bolo and Ryan Madison. And,
great 4-pack.
Mate,
great
it was
4-pack.
like all the guys. It was where like Reed Marnie was there.
I think Isaiah Papali was having a killer season there. Yeah,
that was his breakout season.
Yeah, killed it.
So incredible team. But during that season, I think I played like maybe 10 games, and that season was in and out of like first grade and reserve grade. But same thing, another 3 big concussions. And when you get 3 on your 3rd big concussion, you have to go see neurologists and independent testing. But it was the last game of the season. So
was your last big
last
one?
concussion. Oh. So round 26 against the Penrith Panthers, I was on the try line, defending our try line, and I had Tavita Pangai running a really hard unders line. And for anyone who knows Tavita, he's like about 120 kilos, probably like one of the most powerful guys in the NRL.
He's quick too.
He's agile. I play with Tavita. He's a great.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, he's a great guy. And so I had to jam and tackle him, and just came off second best.
As you do against.
Yeah, as you do. There's a video of it.
Oh, is there?
Yeah. I'll show you after. It's a pretty wild video, man. It was like so I jammed in on him. Whiplash, head hit the back of the ground, and then out.
Can't remember it.
No, don't remember that game. And then end up getting walked off the field, do all the testing. And another thing, I was like, third head knock. And we were going into we were playing semi-finals. So I wanted to play the semi-finals, but I knew I wouldn't have made the first one because naturally you have to have a week off after being walked off. And so I woke up the next day and naturally a bit of a headache because it was a bit of an impact.
Yeah.
But that following week we end up getting knocked out. So everyone just goes off on holidays, do what you got to do. So I didn't see any of the boys. And I remember thinking, and those following weeks, that headache just kept hanging around.
Oh, right.
And then my big symptoms were I couldn't train. I'd train, I'd sleep all afternoon. Irritability. I remember seeing I've told the story before. It was my granddad's 80th birthday or whatever, and he wasn't doing that well. We thought he probably wasn't going to last that long. I remember just being sitting there at the dinner, just being angry, and just being thinking of anywhere else I could have been, which is really unlike me because I love my family, love my granddad. And then I got back into the car. I remember just fucking just crying. I mean, like, fuck, you're not going to see your granddad for like much long. So why are you in such a rush to get out of here? And so I was conscious of all these things, and obviously like had the follow-up testing with the neurologist because the 3 you do. And I was completely honest. I was just like, because I was nervous, man. Like and obviously like you hear the headlines, you hear all these things about people, and you're like, and if I'm being honest, man, I've had some big head knocks in my time, and I've also had a lot that have gone unnoticed and undiagnosed. So I was conscious of that as well. And so I was just honest with the neurologist at the time. Did the whole day of testing, brain scans, literacy, numeracy, reaction time, balance testing, coordination. You do the whole thing. You're cooked by the end of the day. And they're obviously comparing that to baselines from previous years. And I had just this like really honest conversation with the neurologist, and he's like, Keegs, like you're 24 years old, you know, you've got a business degree, you're halfway through an MBA, you're curious about other things outside of football. You're at a time now where you're like flirting with that space of like, what happens if you get a couple more?
Yeah.
You know, like he's like, once you start getting to like those double digits, probably something where you should really consider medically retiring. And I knew that I had to have more than double. And so he just like, if I'm being completely honest with you, he's like, I would recommend that you should medically retire from rugby league.
Yeah.
And to be honest, mate, if I wanted to push back and be like, no, I'm sweet, like I don't have a headache, like my emotions are in check, and just like talk shit, I probably could have come back and kept playing. You know what I mean? Like if I wasn't honest with him and just like brushed all the symptoms, I genuinely think I probably could have convinced him to let me keep play. But in that moment, once we had that conversation, I had a partner at the time, talked to my family. I was like, well, what's really important for me? Like, I want to be good when I'm 40 and 50 and 60. And like, I want to be able to articulate my words. I want to be successful in business. I want to be able to help people. Like, I want to be able to be good with my kids one day. I don't want to have them to have a dad who can't articulate their words. And so I was just like, well, what's a priority? So for me, priority was taking his recommendation and being medically retired at 24. And it was hard. It sucks. And there's a period of mourning. But man, I don't regret it at all.
No, that's something that I do regret is listening to that, because I wish I had that. I wish I had that outlook at that age when they were like pretty much at the same thing. They were like, you know, that's.
But you're 21, man.
I'm 21, but you know what's mental? When I tell people what post-concussion syndrome was like and how long it lasted, people are like, why the fuck did you keep playing?
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know. And there's a bit of regret in me now that's why I'm putting so much effort into my health, because I am scared that you know, we talk about the drinking, head knocks drinking.
Yeah.
What I do in my 20s, head knock and drinking.
Drinking's the worst thing that you can do when you have a head knock.
And, and that's all I did in my 20s. And I look back on it now and go, holy shit, I am so scared that I've done some irreversible damage that now for the last 3 years and for the rest of my life, I'm like, everything is towards mental health, physical health. And going sort of back to when I finished playing, I had really mixed feelings about when I stopped playing. On one hand, I never thought of my identity as a rugby player. I thought I had so much more to offer than to play rugby. And when I was around friends and family, I didn't want to talk about footy because that's all I did. I just wanted to have conversations about other things that I was interested in. But everyone, you know, naturally everyone was just like, how's footy going? And I'm like, yeah, it's good, man. Like, let's. What else has been going on? Yeah. But on the other hand, I had a lot of ego tied up in rugby because I knew that I was good at it, and I really struggled letting go of it because I done a lot of work about it. It was the first time I remember being seen as a kid. Like, I was really anxious as a kid. I was really, I had friends, but I didn't feel popular. I didn't have this attention. And I remember being seen because I started to get good at footy. So I started to get attention. I started to feel needed or valued. And I really struggled letting go of that. Can you remember the first time that you felt seen?
Yeah, it was the same.
Same thing?
Footy, yeah.
Footy, yeah.
You think you're the, mate, I was a fat chubby kid at school. Like, that was the internal dialogue that I had. Maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. But yeah, it was the footy thing. It was the first time you score a couple of tries. I was like, I remember like when it being in like under eights and like getting 5 tries a game, and I remember thinking like, this is your standard. Like you just naturally, like you just usually score this many tries.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it was only because I was bigger than everyone. I was skillful. I fucking,
It's a man child.
you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was this. It was
The scene. I remember like getting first picked in sports stuff. I was like, oh fuck yeah! Like maybe this is like my calling. Maybe this is how I fit in with people, is to be good at sport.
bro. And then like take that into, and then because like you have these little experiences growing up, you get recognized, and that's great. And then you start thinking like now it's just like, well, is my thing like words of affirmation, or not words of affirmation, what's that, like your love language where you're, is it words of affirmation?
Yeah, it can be.
I think, what is it? It's like, but like just getting positive feedback.
Yeah, positive. It
Like,
works affirmation. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jordan's is act of service.
Acts of service. Yeah. So like, and I think I'm constantly trying to like crave that thing because it's so ingrained in me from when you were a kid, and then like go through, it's being reinforced. Like when you've got coaches who like, I love when you did that, do that. Like I love your aggressive style of play and keep doing that. You're like, well, these are the things that I'm going to keep doing because that's me getting the attention and being like almost recognized.
Yeah.
And it sounds like really like surface level and shallow, but it's because you've had like all these like really deep ingrained experiences from when you're first being seen as a young kid. So yeah, it's a very interesting conversation.
There's a centre that used to play for the All Blacks. His name's Conrad Smith. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Played almost 100 tests for the All Blacks. Yeah. And there's a quote that he said was, rugby is not who I am, it's what I do. Did you ever have struggle with your identity tied up in being Keegan, the NRL player? Interesting
conversation. Seen it a lot with friends, especially like high profile crew who are playing. To be honest, mate, I don't think I did to that really extreme extent. To the really extreme end. I'm sure I had like parts of it, but I think I was similar to you. Like I was very curious about other things. I love surfing. A lot of my mates were also outside of footy as well, so we weren't talking about footy.
Same. I was lucky with that. Yeah.
So like, I don't think I ever really struggled with that. To be honest, like coming out, I think I fell into some things that I really loved. I think like training and being active is probably like more so my identity.
Yeah.
But the Keegan Hipgrave, the rugby player, maybe to a degree when I was a little bit younger, but then the back end of my career, I think that sort of phased out.
Yeah, you're happy. You're not happy to let it go, but you were more comfortable to say.
Very happy to let it
go.
go.
I can say that?
Yeah, for sure, man.
Okay.
For sure. Like I don't regret anything of playing professional rugby league. It gave me so many traits and I met so many incredible people, and I am not the person I am today if I didn't play sport and didn't play professional footy. But would I go back and would I keep doing that? And do I want to be that person? Nah, man. Like I love what I do now, and I'm way more happy with what I'm doing now.
Well, that was my next question. If you had your time again, is there anything that you'd do differently, or you're content in how your life is at the moment?
It's a tricky one because you always think like, should I have gone to a better team?
Yeah.
Like, should I have taken that contract to Melbourne Storm? Should I have taken that,
Did you?
Yeah. When I was at the Titans, I got offered a 2-year deal to go to Melbourne Storm.
And
it was Bellamy. All the crew was still there.
The crew was still there,
Billy,
almost in their prime too.
Everyone was in their prime,
Yeah.
and I remember. And this is like how stupid I was. I was just like, and it's not stupid because like if all those things didn't happen, then I wouldn't be here today.
Exactly.
So I wouldn't change. I wouldn't change it.
Yeah.
But you do look back and you're like, they won the premiership that year. Like that would have been like that would have been cool.
You always wonder, Yeah.
But I remember thinking like it was like same cash as what I was being offered at Gold Coast. It was really good cash, and I remember thinking like, like all my friends are here, all my family's here. Like I like surfing. I can't surf that much in Melbourne. Like this was my dialogue. That I was and to be honest, I kind of probably wanted to be like a one club player as well. That probably played a little part of it. I probably had a bit more loyalty to the club at that time.
Especially your home team too. It's just
hometown team. But like it's hard because I look back. It was actually funny. Dave Donahue, who's now CEO of the Bronx.
He was at the Storm.
He was at the Storm. I remember I ran into him at the Bronx one time. He's just like, "Hey, Dave." He's like, "Hey, Keegs." He's like, "Oh, we tried to sign you at the Storm one day." I was like, "Yeah, probably should have taken it." He's like, "Yeah, you probably should have."
Is that what he said?
Yeah. And I remember, and it's a back and forth one because you think, it would have been cool to see how good you could have been in that system. Like I had a lot of conversations with guys who probably regret that, where they're like, I wish I went into a Roosters system. I wish I went into a Melbourne Storm system. that would have been cool to do, and to find out how good you could have been. But man, like, that's life.
Let's talk about the podcast and how that came about, and why are you such an advocate for mental health?
Yeah, man. I think anyone who's really passionate about a certain space, they obviously have a personal relationship to it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Brain cancer, breast cancer, mental health, like anxiety, depression, like eating disorders. Anyone, like, you can see it. They usually have a personal relationship, and yeah, I've got a personal relationship to it. I think my first experience with mental health was when I lost one of my really good friends to suicide, Keegan Hipgrave. We're 17. I could talk about Keegan forever, to be honest. Like, he's a
legend,
best dude.
Yeah.
Like, we're both captain of like this, like Queensland schoolboys. We're both like rooming together. Like that guy who was like captain, everyone loved, girls loved him. Like, best footy player. Like, everyone frothed him. And we went, like, we roomed together at this carnival, both got picked in the Australian schoolboys competition that I talked about, that 6-week tour of England and France. He ended up breaking his ankle, breaking his leg in that comp, so he couldn't go overseas with us, the selection. He couldn't go overseas. We had this mad trip. It was amazing. And that was in November of 2014. And in Australia Day that following year, Keegan ended up committing suicide. Really, like that felt like obviously shocked everyone. Think someone who's like so great and so impressive like would do that. Obviously, I found out later that Keegan was struggling, undiagnosed, probably bipolar. Had a few issues that I won't talk about on the podcast. But we lost Keegan, so that was the first time that I sort of recognized that. But mate, I put that in a box, like we talked about this morning in the ice bath. Like, I put that in a box, and I didn't go to the funeral.
Didn't you?
Nah. Sorry, man.
That's all right.
Oh fuck! It's like, so every time I fucking talk about him, man, like he's he's the best. Like, I put it in a box, and I didn't talk about it for ages, and it's funny because I talk about him so much now, and usually I'm pretty good. I don't know why it's got me today. But like, it's weird because like, I put that in a box, but then the mental health part was like something that was really like important to me. And so coming in a professional environment, I noticed that guys weren't talking about what was going on. Very fucking alpha and testosterone built environment. And I hated that. I wanted to change it. And so, like, I got on board with Movember. We're doing some stuff with the club. We hosted like all these amazing events. Boys would shave off their moustache. We'd auction it off to the crowd. It was great way to come together. Yeah. So got involved with Movember and just did that like subconsciously, or like just every year we'd just do it. And then I started to realize, like, when I came out of footy, that like I kind of wanted to learn more about psychology and mental health. So I was like, well, what do I want to be doing for the next 10 years? Like, what does that look like? Just kind of the journey of how it all took place. And so I was like, well, I actually want to know the facts. I don't want to be just some guy who is talking about it because you don't know, like, and I don't know. So I went back to uni, started studying psych. And I was like, okay, well, that's one piece of the puzzle. Like, how do you actually like make genuine change, and how do you move the needle? And I think encouraging conversation and getting people to talk is great. So I thought, well, what a way to be able to have conversations with people who we all look up to, right? Like, and for me, athletes were it. So they could be seen talk about their own struggles and vulnerabilities, and I think it makes it okay for the rest of us, right? And so, and I'm very fortunate that I've got a really great network of friends who are playing sport and all different sports, whether it's rugby league and union and AFL and Olympic sports, and so I was like, well, it'd be wrong of me not to have these conversations. So we started the podcast. That's kind of how that came about.
Yes.
But man, there's one thing that I do want to touch on, because I think it's important to the story. You start the podcast and like, you like go into other podcasts to talk about it. One I did was with we're in Melbourne. I did a podcast, and he's like one of the early questions, like, why'd you start the podcast?
Yeah.
And I hadn't spoken about it.
Yeah.
I hadn't spoken about Regan or the reason why, and like obviously everything I just said about the importance of it, but I hadn't actually done it. And I spoke about it, and I got choked up naturally. And I thought I brushed over it. Like I thought I didn't give Regan the time that he deserved, and I was really angry at myself. But the thing was, he actually clipped it up, and it was actually a really beautiful clip. And we put it on socials, and it's actually still pinned. It's still pinned on my Instagram. It's the first pinned.
Nice, yeah.
And Regan's mum commented on it.
Did she?
Yeah, she messaged me, and she's like, "Oh man," she's like, "Thank you so much for keeping Regan's story alive." And I was like, obviously, just like overwhelmed with emotion. I don't know why I'm crying so much, man. I'm so sorry, bro.
That's all right, brother.
I don't know why I'm crying so much.
Was that the first time that she's spoken to you?
First time I spoke to her in like 8 years, man.
Really?
Since it happened, 10 years, yeah. And I was like, do you mind if I just jump on a call with you real quick? And we ended up talking for like an hour, man. And I just like apologized for not going to the funeral. And I was like, I probably should have asked your permission to talk about Regan. And she's like, don't you ever apologize for talking about him. He's like, the best thing. So my biggest fear was that when we lost Regan was that people would forget about him. She's like, don't you ever like stop talking about him. So I make a point when I am talking about it to talk about him, like how he is and what type of person he was, because he was such a legend.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and after that obviously like unbottled a whole heap of emotion that we talked about before, like that was just been in a box. And
what was that feeling like for 8 years suppressing it?
Hey, like to be honest, like I got off the phone to them, I called my mum, and we debriefed on that, and she's like, we didn't want to bring it up with you because we didn't want to make you upset.
Yeah.
That she's like natural mum instinct, like they don't want to see your kid upset, and so she's just like, oh, we just wanted you to be happy, and so we didn't talk about it. Which I get it. Like I get it.
I did it to Brock. You've met Brock?
Yeah.
Didn't talk about his dad passing. His dad committed suicide.
Yeah.
Didn't talk about it because I didn't want to make him upset.
Yeah.
So for years, I regret it still to this day.
Yeah.
I didn't ask him about it. When it would catch up, it was everything other than what he's going through.
Yes.
Because I was like, I don't want to make him cry. He's probably already thinking about it. He doesn't need me to be like, how's your day going?
But then it's tricky because like sometimes you just want that. You don't want to talk about it. You just want those mates that you can go and have a laugh with, right?
And get your mind off it. But I wish I did just once be like, and it's only until he came on the podcast that we actually had a proper chat about it.
Right.
I said to him, I'm so sorry. Because it's 10 years.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry that I didn't actually do a proper check and be like, hey, he's like, hell, it's all good. Like, I love that we went to the gym or we did other things. Yeah.
But yeah, man, that call, I ended up speaking to mum about it, did the whole thing, and then spoke to my psych about it. And obviously like that's probably the main reason why I started the podcast. And then like, don't get me wrong, we all have our own like mental health struggles. Some things that I'm probably not like willing to talk about. I will eventually. But I don't know if I'm ready to talk about like my own stuff, which is a bit hypocritical because like I've got a mental health and sport podcast. But
no, I feel you, man, because I've been pretty open in different episodes about the sort of the struggles I had with depression and anxiety, and like I went through my own phase of suicide thoughts that sort of snowballed, and it's really frightening the power of your mind and how one thought can become your reality. And there was a stage in my life in Brisbane where I tried to take my own life, drug overdose, and I managed to survive that, and I never talked about it. I was in denial for years, and then didn't talk to my parents about it until my dad came on the podcast, which I talked to you about, and I was just like, all right, you tell me your childhood and I'll tell you sort of what I've been through. And then going back on sort of the things that I've been proactive about, I'm going through sort of the protocols now for bipolar. Because I know there's something different about me. I know there's different things that how I'm feeling in certain situations that aren't normal. And I recognize that, and I'm aware of that now, whereas before I wasn't. So I'm going through. It's a bit of a lengthy process to get.
I'd love to
diagnosed fully. They're like, look, you're on a. I've done a bipolar 10-day course at the mental health hospital up in the sunny coast. He's like, you're on a spectrum. I thought I was bad. He's like, look, you're on a spectrum. You're at one end of the spectrum. You're down here. You're not as bad as you think you are. Your highs are normal.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, sweet.
Yeah.
But your lows are just lower than. Yeah. Everyone goes through highs and lows. Is when you get a low, it's I'm not the best person to be around when I wasn't aware of it. Now I'm aware of it. I can be a bit more. My mechanisms to cope are a little bit better. Like I can actually have a conversation with people, whereas before Jordan would be like, oh, you would need like a day by yourself.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh fuck, was I really waste a day of this me being in a low? So now I can sort of like function on a low, whereas before I couldn't. Have you ever experienced depression, anxiety, or something that you're happy to talk about? I know.
Yeah, it's a hard one.
Pass.
Yeah, no, I don't want to pass on it. Because there might be like a level of I don't know. Yeah, like to answer your question, yes. Like,
yes.
I think I definitely have struggled with with depression. Not deep. I don't think like probably not like your lows. But definitely like waves of depression. I think that's tied into relationships for me. Yeah, like there's been periods. There's definitely been periods. What I will say, I won't talk about that specifically, just because I don't really want to.
Yeah, that's
specifically.
Okay. Yeah.
But like what I did learn coming out of it, was that like that feeling when you're like so in it, especially around like suicidal ideologies. It's like you can't see a way out. And it's an awful feeling, man. It is an awful feeling. And growing up, I heard people say like, "Oh, it's selfish to like to commit suicide, and it's selfish to do that." And it's just like, well, when you're so far in it, and like you're not thinking about anything else, So that's a tricky thing to get out. But what I did learn was that like over time, you start to build up confidence, and you start to like not get reps in, because that's a terrible analogy, but like you start to understand that that you actually can overcome it. And so when you are faced with a really really trying and hard event, then you've got over it in the past, and you're going to be able to get over it in the future. That's why I think youth suicide and young kids who go through it, they don't have those runs. They don't have those runs on the board. Yeah. So that's probably
they don't know if they can get through it.
That's probably the hardest thing that they've gone through at the time. Whether it's a relationship, whether it's losing a family member, whether it's like struggling financially, and the relationship piece is an interesting one, because finance and relationships are two of the major contributors to male suicide between ages of, I think, 23 and 44, 17 and 44, whatever it is. But it's not talked about that much. Yeah, the relationship piece, which I find very interesting, and I want to be able to articulate it more before talking about it. But it's a interesting topic. But that's definitely like it's so hard, because it's a permanent solution for a temporary problem, right? And you just want to say to like these kids and even adults, right? Like, mate, we were filming a clip from November, just before leaving for the States, maybe like a month and a half ago. And it was like, they put out this like really incredible report around the statistics around mental health, especially male suicide in regional areas, Indigenous communities, LGBTQ, all the things. Incredible report. So we created this like little clip around like avoiding isolation in communities. So I had like me and some mates, we went surfing, and we just did like a little script over the top of it. It was a beautiful piece. But the week before, we were supposed to be filming on the Saturday. Our videographer's family member committed suicide that week.
Fuck me.
And I'm like, how fucking like prevalent is it in community where it's like we're literally filming a thing on suicide prevention and community, and our videographer is like, he's an incredible guy, and he's the best dude in the world, and I feel so deeply for him and his family. And it was just like, that's how relevant it is in community. And I'm like, fuck, this is why like we have to have these conversations. And like, what are the actual like practical tips that we can give friends, family members, so they don't go through this? Like, That's why I'm studying psychology, man. Like I want to be able to tools to be able to help, like, yes, me personally, but also friends and family. Like I think that's that's such an incredible tool to have. That feeling of like having someone you can talk to, but knowing that not everyone has that person that they can talk to. There are so many incredible helplines. Like I know people who like will call them, like they will actually use them. People think, oh, they're just the helplines there in the backline. Fucking use them, because that's what they're there for. They're trained
lives.
there. They actually save lives. They are making genuine impact.
And that's the thing you said, like having the tools. Because the way I explained it to say my family is that I didn't want to die. I just didn't know how else to make the pain end. I didn't know the tools. I didn't know where to turn to. I didn't know who to talk to about it. I didn't know how to articulate what I'm going through. I didn't know how to put it into words. And also I didn't like search for answers of how to fix it. I just lived in that pain.
Yeah.
And just thinking, all right, well, to be honest with you, I told my dad this. I said the reason I kept playing footy, even though through the injuries and the head knocks, is because I didn't think I was going to make it out of my 20s.
Yeah, I remember you saying that, man.
I thought I'll just play footy, and when I can't play footy, I'll take my life.
Was that the thought?
That was the thought.
Really?
Yeah. So I'll just keep playing. I don't care about my body, because at the end of the day, I'm going to commit suicide anyway. That was the thought. That was the thought pattern. And that was such a scary thought pattern now, because I know the tools now. My mental health is best it's ever been. I love my life. I love the future. I look forward to future Elliot, whereas before, future Elliot was a deadline. Future Elliot was, at 29, when I can't play footy, I'm checking out.
Yeah, man. It's an awful place to be in.
Yeah.
Right? We should upon anyone. But just, it's like, the takeaway is just like, it's hard to just hear someone say like, just know you'll get through it. Like it's so hard to like actually absorb that in, but fucking really absorb that in, and just know that like, just get a couple runs on the board, just get a couple good days.
I was in New Zealand. I was going through a bit of shit over there when it sort of first started, and I had a really good mate of mine. I'll give you a shout out, Jono, and he said to me, he's gone through something similar, and he said to me, "Trust me, mate." You will come out of that dark tunnel. Yeah. Trust me. Yeah. I know it doesn't seem like you will. I know you're at the entrance of it, and I know that the end is so far down the road, but I just want you to know that you will get out. 10 years later, I went through all this sort of stuff. 10 years later, I'm at such a good point now. I messaged him. Yeah. Hadn't spoken to him.
Really?
I shot him a message, and I was like, remember that time at that footy club 10 years ago when you said, I'll be out of the tunnel? He goes, yeah. I go, I'm out. Yeah. And he goes,
wow, man.
Amazing.
Wow.
So I'm going over to New Zealand to visit him.
Yeah, I love that.
What's the current narrative within NRL clubs now talking about mental health? I remember when I first went through, it was like you talk to a psychologist, the team psychologist, if you've got something wrong, and you almost do it in secrecy.
Yeah.
What do you think is the climate now within NRL clubs?
Yeah, I think it's changed, man.
Changed a lot?
Yeah, I think it's evolved heaps over time. I think it's like that younger generation coming through where they're willing to talk about what's going on. Like we had like Kalen and Paddy, perfect example. Kalen Ponga, Paddy Carrigan, two of the best players in the competition, come on the podcast to talk about their own vulnerabilities, right? They talk about how they use like mindset coaches and club psychologists and even like it's shifting and it's changing. And I think it's that younger generation that's coming through. Naturally, it's going to be there are pockets. There are going to be that natural like tough mentality. I think there will probably always be an underlying theme there. But from when we came into it, from where it is now, leaps and bounds.
Oh, awesome.
Do I think that there's room to improve? 100%. Like that's why the podcast exists, man. But like, and to be honest, like when I was coming through, I didn't know of anyone who had played professional sport, but then also had a foundation of psychology. Like I didn't know anyone who had that both, because you're much more likely to talk to someone who's like a little bit more relatable. And so I was just like, well, if I could be that guy for mates who are still in it or coming out, then I think that would be a nice like relatability piece.
Well, it's that lived experience, but it's also the theory behind
it's like
it
we
too.
Get it. Like we get it.
Yeah.
We know, like we get what you're going through. We know, like we talked about social media. We talked about pressures, like anxiety, depression, performance anxiety. Like we understand it. We've got lived experience in it. But having the psychology like foundations to be like, this is why you're feeling this way, and these are potentially some tips that might be able to help, and understanding that like it's going to take time and finding your tools, because everyone's tools different, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And and just like, I guess like trialing different things. But yeah, to answer your question, I think it's changing, but I think that we've got a bit to go.
Well, that's awesome though. That's still, I've got some, some footy mates that are still playing union at the moment, and they sort of know our missions are very similar. What we're trying to do, trying to get that conversation going, and they're like, I don't talk about my feelings, and I like it like that. And I said, that's fine. I'm not trying to push that on you, but all I'm trying to say is, if you want to, you can.
Yes. Oh, I love that, man.
If you want to, it's all good. If you want to, if you don't want to, sweet. If you're less happy, everything's good, then you don't talk about your feelings.
Yeah, man.
But if you want to, don't hide it.
Yeah.
And it's funny, they always talk to me on the fucking piss when they're out, and I'm like, if you're gonna talk to me, perfect, let's just do it. And they let it out.
And it's probably good that you like you're not drinking.
No, I'm not drinking,
because you'll be able to remember all that stuff, and you'll be able to
And
follow
I bring it up with them.
Yeah, right.
I go, remember that conversation? They go, no. I go, I remember
Actually,
it.
I'm not drinking, man.
The Keegan Company podcast, it's affected and impacted so many people in Australia and around the world. However, I'm really interested to hear how it's impacted yourself.
Yeah.
What are the lessons that it's taught you over this journey?
Oh man, so many things. Like surface level, like to be able to like communicate and being able to articulate words, being able to navigate conversation, like learning how to produce and media and content, like all those top level things. I think are really fun. Really fun things. There's a few things that I really love about the podcast. I like the relationship building piece. A lot of everyone that's come on have either been really good friends or they've been mutually mutual friends. So there's a level of trust there. The ability to make someone feel like really comfortable, and you've done such an incredible job, bro.
I appreciate that.
Man, like hats off to you, bro, because so many times I'm coming on a podcast and I'm tearing up. So and so I do feel like super comfortable here. I think that first of all, props to you. But that ability to make someone feel comfortable, like we talked about it beforehand, like we want to make, like it's a hard thing to be vulnerable, right? Sometimes. So being able to have someone to come in and feel like that they can talk to you it's an impressive thing. So I like that piece. I've learned that over time. So when someone comes in, we want to make them feel comfortable, and I think that's been a really good learning piece. What else? I don't know. I just love like highlighting people's stories. I think I don't know, subconsciously I think I'm probably I like the creative side, which probably don't really expect from a footy player, to be honest. But I really love that creative side and storytelling.
Same. Yeah.
Being able to tell someone's story.
It's an art form.
It's art.
So I never thought I was a creative person, ever.
Right.
I was like, I'm just a footy player. I'm not creative.
Yes.
But being a conversationalist is an art form.
Yes.
Telling a story is an art form. And I think it's changed my perspective on my podcast is I think of it as my art.
Yes.
And having these conversations and going back to that vulnerability bit, I've read a really good book by Brene Brown about vulnerability, and she talks about, how to have a lasting relationship with someone and build that trust and connection. It's a lot of people think it's about, being funny or being smart or having lots of money.
Yeah.
She talks about it's none of those things. It's how you make people feel that builds that lasting relationship, and vulnerability cuts straight to the core of that connection. And when you share something about yourself, it sort of enables or allows that person to share something about themselves as too. So it'd be very, like you do the same thing in your podcast. It's almost a bit of back and forth.
Yes.
And it's got to be. And I want it that way because I want that person to feel like, I get it too.
Opens the door, man.
Opens the door a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's how the conversations I have with my friends is I'm trying to open the door just a little bit.
Yeah, it's an interesting piece. Like when you're able to be vulnerable there, people are way more likely to be vulnerable with you, not just in a podcast setting, but in a day-to-day setting.
Yeah.
Especially like if you've got someone who you think might be struggling a little bit, like leading like with potentially something that you're struggling with. And it doesn't have to be a big thing.
No.
But that sort of like opens the door a little bit, which I think is cool.
Yeah. So, something that I really loved was in your episode with Alex Glenn, he said something about what he did at the Broncos at Triple H.
Oh, yes. Love that.
So it's heroes, hardship, and highlight. So I just want to share with you my heroes are I looked up to a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
Like my sporting idol was Greg Inglis.
Yeah.
Shout out GI.
Yeah.
I just thought he was the
Great
man. Did you play against him?
I did. Yeah.
Oh, fucking
yeah,
hectic.
yeah.
So my hardship was definitely going through that period of about 4 or 5 years of just, suicide ideologies of just like, I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
That was easily the hardest thing that I've ever had to overcome. And I had to overcome it. People can offer you a lot of help.
Yeah.
People can be there for you. People can talk you through it. But at the end of the day, for me, it came down to me making those decisions and me wanting to change. So for me to get myself out of that headspace and be where I am today, that's definitely that hardship. But it's also the highlight, getting out of that. And you talked about before, like some of the hardest times that we've been through have produced some of the best times, the best opportunities. So, and I don't think I would have this awareness, or I don't think I would love myself as much as I do if I didn't go through those shit times and be able to talk about it and relate to people. Because whether we like to believe it or not, everyone's going through their own battles. And I'm not glad, but I'm fortunate I made it out, but I don't regret any of that stuff. It's made me who I am today.
For sure. For sure. I love every bit of that, man. It's huge.
No alcohol.
Yeah.
Off it?
We are, it's a whole conversation, man.
Different day?
Yeah.
Different day.
Yeah. Like I am, like I've had some drink. I did a year sober.
Yeah.
I did a year sober. It was a few reasons, just quickly. Big year with the podcast, study, full-time work. So I understand I can't lose a weekend being on the piss or being hungover. Brain health. Yeah. We talked about that. I want to be good. And also just a challenge, like a hard thing. Like I've been drinking, since I was 18. 18. and I mean, in a footy environment, very heavily.
You did mention you look older at younger.
Yeah. I did look old when I was younger, actually. So those were the three things. Yeah. And I said I was going to do a year. And I did it. I did it September 3rd. I was over in LA, actually. And it was a fun year, man. Like people say, "Oh, was it hard? Did you struggle with it?" Didn't struggle, man. Like it was like we had like 3 bucks parties and 2 weddings the first month of going sober.
3 bucks parties.
3 bucks parties
and 2 weddings.
2 weddings. There was supposed to be another bucks party and another wedding, but it got cancelled. Which we won't talk about. Which we won't talk about. But it was a big month, and I was like, if I can do that, then I can do the whole year. And don't get me wrong, I'm not going home early. Like I was out.
I'm still having fun.
I'm still out there, and that was such a great way to like give myself confidence to go through it. So I'll still go out. I'll still do all the things. But I'll just go home when I'm tired and like maybe 12 o'clock, and then I'll still train the next day.
Yeah, nice. So now you're just easing way into it all.
Well, this is and towards the back end, because I was in I just did a trip to New York, Boston, LA with the podcast. We did like 10 podcasts in 12 days. It was a huge thing. It was insane. It was so much fun. I'll tell you a little bit more about it off air. But it was such a big thing. And leading up to that trip, I was like, oh well, I'll have New York and Boston, and my year sober will fall in LA. Yeah. And I was like, oh, it'd be kind of cool to like have your like year, or like finish it earlier in like New York or this. And it was anyway, it was this constant back and forth. Like even after the year, I was like, do I want to keep drinking or do I not want to keep drinking? Because to be honest, mate, this year has been the best year of my life.
Really?
The best year ever. With the podcast, with building friendships and relationships and feeling comfortable with like who I am. Like it's been the opportunities that have come from it, from relationships point of view, from a financial point. Like it's been the best year. And I put that down largely to not drinking. Yeah. The ability to be more productive, just the amount of volume of work to get through, being more present with friends and family. Like there's just so many good, like talk about performance enhancing, like just don't drink. Like
that's performance enhancing.
That's performance enhancing enough. And so I'm constantly battling, like, do I drink again? Do I not drink again? And it was funny. We did we're at Whoop. Whoop's a unofficial partner of the podcast. We do some stuff with them, and we're in their HQ, which is like insane, like 8 stories, like sleep labs and gyms and podcast studios and everything. And we were sitting with their vice president of research, algorithms and data. Emily Capitalupo, first ever employee at Whoop. They're a $3.6 billion company now. Insane.
Mental,
Big.
Yeah.
I still like, how do we even get here? Like, we're so out of our depth.
Bit of imposter syndrome, a little bit.
But we sat down with Emily and the same thing, built rapport, built relationship, and we just got into this really great flow of alcohol. And she like gave us all the statistics, you know, all the data, all the raw data, and her big thing is like, we want to give you the evidence for you to be able to make your decision. And I told her, I'm like, I'm struggling with this thing. Do I drink or not to drink? She's like, I'm not going to tell you what to do, firstly. But she's just like, I want to give you all the evidence. She's like, I don't drink for most times of the year, but there'll be some times where I want to have a glass of wine with my friend on their wedding day. But I plan for it. Like, I just know that I'm not going to have something on for the next day because I know I'm not going to be at capacity. And so I was thinking about that, and I was just like, well, yeah, like, I don't think I'm going to go back to drinking the way I used to, especially when I was playing footy. I think probably a year prior I was sober curious for a year beforehand, so I probably wasn't drinking that much anyway. But I was just like, I don't think I'm going to do that. But like, will I have a glass of wine with my sister on a wedding? Yeah.
Absolutely.
I haven't seen some really good friends in a little while. I'll have a beer with them. I'll still go out. I'll just have a soda and lime. So yeah, man, like, I think that's where I'm sitting now. I'll have a drink here and there, but it's not going to be like I need to, because I've proven to myself that I don't have to.
You don't need it, Just your view on it's just altered a little bit.
It's just fully shifted. It's fully shifted.
So we're at the time where you do quick fire questions, so you can answer this as quickly or as long as you as you want. What's the time?
10:06.
Okay, we'll get through it. If you could go back to a time in your life, where would you go and why?
I could go back to a time in my life and why. Oh my God, so hard. I think year 12 was a great year for me.
Yeah, I loved it.
I loved year 12.
Did you?
Yeah. Like, just so many good things. So many great friendships. Footy was going really well. I think I really enjoyed that time. Also, like, first year of being back on the Gold Coast, playing for the Titans. Like, back with all my friends. The best, man.
What are your 3 non-negotiables for living a healthy and full life?
Yep, love that question. Training, physical activity, have to. Sleep. Actually, no, sleep's probably one. I've got a very hard rule of sleep quality and sleep consistency, like going to bed and waking up at the same time. I try and get in bed by like 8:30, up usually about 5.
Yeah, nice.
And sometimes there'll be times at uni where that, like, naturally that just has to extend to fucking 12, 1 o'clock in the morning just to get through it all. That's naturally going to happen, especially in assessment time. But most, like, 99% of the time, sleep, and then probably like diet and community as well. Like, I will make sure to see my family every week, make sure to see my friends, and then also, like, I love eating really good quality food. I had this thing, like, when I was playing footy, I was just like, I will, like, people spend money on different things. Food is the one thing that I will not put a limit on. And I know, and I'm very fortunate to be in the position where I am. But, like, I want to eat good quality meat and I want to eat good quality whole foods.
It's so funny because I got some mates that are into cars and different hobbies and spend money on things. And I said to Jordan, I was like, I'm not into that stuff. And Jordan's like, you spend a fuckload of money on good quality meat.
Oh my God.
You ask where it comes from, what farm it's from, like all this, what it's, and Jordan's like, that's your thing. That's your thing you spend money on. And like, she's like, you got a recovery room in your garage. I was like, yeah, fair call. All right. Okay. My thing's health, I guess. Yeah.
For sure.
How have you defined success?
Meaningful work and meaningful relationships.
Oh, I love that.
I could do a whole thing on that, but if I could do that, I'm doing good.
And this is just from the footy fan. Top 5 best players played with or against.
Top 5 played with and against.
Or against. Just your top 5.
Jared Waerea-Hargreaves. I loved his style of football. Kalen Ponga, because he is my dog and I fucking love him.
He's a
and
fucking magician.
Man, I remember coming up against him on the edge.
What do I do?
He stepped me the whole time, made me look like a fool. Titans versus Newcastle. I forgot what year
We'll look it up.
Who else was really great to play with and against? Ryan James, captain of the Titans when I was there. He's like one of my dear friends now. So much love for him. 2 more. I really liked playing with Isaiah Papali'i.
Oh, yeah.
He's such a great trainer, such an incredible player, works incredibly hard. And time at Bronx, who was my favourite at Bronx? Probably like Corey Parker, just because he was my idol. Sort of took me under his wing a little bit when I was a kid.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
So I've got a closing tradition of the podcast where I don't actually ask the last question.
Yeah, okay.
I get family and friends.
Oh, gotcha.
They send in questions for the guest.
Yeah.
So you've got some pretty amazing mates.
Yeah.
Turn this up, see if you can hear it.
Hello, Keegsy. It's James here, mate. I've got 2 questions for you today, brother. First question. Favourite spot on the Gold Coast for a coffee and a bit of a geeze? As we know, there's a fair few of them around. And, mate, second question. How do you go juggling, the podcast, full-time work, your studies, social events and whatnot? What's kind of your escape, mate? And I guess what are the tools you use to kind of, make sure you don't burn both ends of the stick? All right,
First of all, I love that, man.
Yeah,
so much. I
man,
love that you do this.
Yeah.
This is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
This is the best thing anyone's
We
ever
got
done.
more, don't you worry.
Oh, far out. Okay, well, I'll go through quickly. Best spot on the Gold Coast for a coffee is Jefferson's at Palmy. I probably shouldn't say this because it's already busy enough. And the second one was balancing work-life study. I think that was the question.
Balancing it all of it. Yeah,
it's a tricky one. Me and Jack have this conversation all the time. To be honest, that guy is like the epitome of like work, like train hard. But then also like have fun with
play
his
hard.
mates. He's the best. Got a lot of time for that man. A lot of love for that man. But I think for me, I don't think there is a balance for me at the moment. Like I think I'm in a very much like a grind period where I think my only balance or a tip was what I said before is like I'll integrate seeing mates with my training. But I recognize that this time of my life, it's not a time to just breeze through. It's going to be a bit unbalanced. It's going to be we're working hard with the podcast. I also work full time, which I love with the Rugby League Players Association, and podcast and study and full time work. So I understand that it's a busy time. But for me, I don't need a whole day, a whole weekend off. Like if I can grab like this morning, like that was such a beautiful time. Like we got to go into P3 recovery in Burleigh, got to get in the ice bath and capture those little moments. I really like take time to really appreciate them because I don't get as many of them as I do. But I think just, being present and taking those moments when they come, but also like recognizing when I am like really burning the candle. It's like, Keys, like you need a morning.
Yeah.
Like just take
a break.
Yeah.
Next one.
G'day, Keegs. It's Fletch and Sanj here. Oh, just want to say anything. We've been tasked with asking you a couple of questions. So I'll get started with one that's a bit more serious. Out of these popular reality TV shows, which one do you think you have the best chance of winning and why? The options are The Bachelor, Love Island, and Dancing with the Stars.
Okay, that's a piss take one.
You've got like my best mates here.
I've got another one for him. We'll do a serious one, but you want to answer that one?
Bachelor, Dancing with the Stars.
Or Love Island?
I couldn't do Love Island.
You couldn't do Love Island?
I
could see you as a dancer though.
I don't know. I don't know if I got that in me, man. I don't know. I feel like I could do like the Love Island or the Bachelor because like still like a single I could do it.
Yeah.
And probably just because my fear of dancing probably.
Yeah.
So that's probably it.
And finally, Keegs, if you could go back and tell 10-year-old you one thing, what would it be?
Again, love both those two, Fletch and Sanj. They're two of my best friends. They've helped me incredibly in some really tough spots. So I've got a lot of love for them. 10-year-old Keegan, don't be in a rush.
Oh, right.
So prevalent. Like, was in a rush to make my NRL debut. Was in a rush to buy a house. Was in a rush to be successful, whatever the fuck that means. Was just always in a rush. It's weird because I'm conscious of it now, and I feel like I'm still rushing. Like talk about the grind period now. Like I'm still like wanting to hit this thing of like this measure of like what I think is successful. It's hard because I like what I said before. Meaningful work and meaningful relationships is always going to be at a core, but then there's always this thing of like, no, like I want it's hard because it's well intentioned. Like I want the podcast to grow because I want to be able to reach more people. So you put so much time and effort into that, and it's a good meaning behind it. But you also burn the candle trying to get that done. Studying, you want to be able to have the tools to be able to help friends and family, but you also burn the candle to try and get all the study in. Working with players who are transitioning out of rugby league, who are in times of transition where it's difficult and it's hard. That's the lived experience that's actually helping them, and that's making genuine impact. But then you do like the same thing, you burn the candle as well. It's the question was like, don't be in a rush.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably something I'm still figuring out.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah.
And that's something that I've really worked hard on, is being present in the moment. Same with you. Like I was such in a rush to get to each checkpoint that I didn't actually appreciate the grind or the journey it took to get to each checkpoint in life.
Yeah.
Like, and now I do this thing, and I do it with you, and I'll do it with everyone that I sort of am close with, is that I when I say goodbye, it sounds sad, but I picture that as a goodbye that I'll never see you again, in the terms of like, I really cherish the moment I'm saying goodbye, I love you. And so don't just blow it up, because I've had sort of friends pass away that I just didn't appreciate that small moments of saying goodbye.
Yeah.
So I do it with Jordan, I do it with my mum and dad. I give them a big hug, and I'm like, I love you. I want the last words, because you never know what life can happen in life. So I just, when I say goodbye to people, it's almost like I really appreciate that moment in time that I get to see them. Yeah. We've got another one.
Hello, Keegie boy. I actually have many questions that I would like to ask you, but none that I think that you would like to share on a popular podcast. So I thought I would play it safe. I thought that you could share some of your favourite childhood memories. And I also thought that you could tell us something that you admire about mum and dad.
I love that.
That's my sister.
Yeah, the best.
Yeah, best. She's the best. I do put a lot of shit on her, but I do love her. Childhood memory is interesting. We went through like our own old home videos on the old like
Did ya?
recorder.
Funny?
Best.
Yeah.
So fun. And there was two that stood out. One was my dad teaching my sister and me to surf. There's a video of my sister like going down like surfing, and then like I think my dad was behind me as I was like a little kid, so surfing. And then also like there's this really cute video of my sister and I, like it was like Christmas Day, and my dad's like good morning Kiki boy, and then I like came over and like
is
gave
that why she said it?
Yeah. And she's like and I like went and gave my sister a kiss on the cheek, and she's like yuck. And it was so wholesome, man. So that was like they're probably like that's two that stand out. But the second question was something that I admire about mum and dad. Mate, like I'm so fortunate, mate. I've got the best parents in the world, man. Like I don't know why I'm fucking crying every time. I love my parents so much, man. They have given me so much. Like they've bent over backwards. Like they just want to help, and they just want to be involved, and they don't ask for anything else but just to spend time with me, right? Like, and it's hard when you're in like these like busy times and busy periods, because like the best thing that they want is just to like spend time with you. They are like two of the most like just like genuine people, right? And like they are genuinely invested in everyone, like genuine and positive. Like when I was growing up, my mum's a teacher, and so all my friends that she was teaching would always be like, or even just random, it's like, you're Mrs. Hipgrave's son, like your mum is the like most positive, like she would never say a bad thing about everyone, and the way she carries herself is just so positive and just so genuine and just really cares. So I like to think that's where I get that from. And my dad would do anything for anyone. Like he was the guy who was just like, if
give the shirt off his back for someone, would he? Yeah,
time and time again, and not ask anything in return. Like he was like, if someone be like, look, we're gonna knock over this brick wall, or we're gonna like knock over this thing, he'd be like, I'll bring my trailer, like what time do you want me? It doesn't ask for anything in return. Like even now, like man, I had like, it was there was this one time where it was a really tricky situation. where like I had to like leave this house, and like me and my ex split up. They drove down from Gold Coast to Sydney, helped me pack up my whole house, or just like my stuff that was in the house, and then like helped me drive it back on a morning's notice. Like, who does that?
And not even a second thought too.
Not even a second thought, man. Like, and there is a million different examples like that. So
the unconditional love that we will experience one day when we have kids. I get the same feeling when I talk about my mum and dad still. Like, they came over from New Zealand with not a penny to their name, raised 3 boys on fuck all money, you know, and we had the best childhood. We were camping, Stradbroke Island, Fraser Island. I had the best childhood. And I'm like, and I was thinking about how did you guys do that? Yeah. And they were like full-time jobs. Mum worked in the same job for 30 years and like 9 to 5, did everything. Dad worked down in Brisbane. It was just like, I don't know how you guys did that. And they were like, well, that was their life for us.
Fuck, man. And like I recognize that we're very fortunate, man. We're so fortunate. And I do feel for people who you don't have that. It's
absolutely
hard. It sucks.
Yeah.
Like, even like we had Kaylee McEwen on the podcast yesterday. And she like lost her dad when she was 19 years old, and she got super emotional about it because she's just like, it was all the little things, like all the little questions about like, how do you navigate life? Like, you're not going to be there when she gets walked down the aisle, like all these little things. And when she was talking about that, like, bro, I don't know if I'm just getting emotional in my old age or what, bro. But I remember thinking just like, it was hitting me because I was like, I could not imagine like not having my parents there. Yeah. It's like what Paul from P3 said this morning. It's like, no matter, like, people ask, like, does it get easier with time? It's just like that. You might get like better to deal with that stuff. But that raw emotion is always going to be there. So I like what you said before about like really cherishing a goodbye.
I got one last one for you. It's a bit of a surprise. You talked about, you know, your reason why around the podcast, and you talked about your mate Regan. So I got Regan's mum actually sent you something in. She sent in, what's your best memory of Regan? As his mum, the one thing I want for him is to always be remembered, and Keegan is making sure of that.
But I don't know how you do this, man. This is wild. My favorite memory of Regan it's like, I'll never forget it because I think about it all the time. It was like the night before we were playing New South Wales, and it was like me, him, and Kurt DeLewis. Me and Regan were rooming together, and Kurt just came in because that's what he's like, for anyone who knows Kurt. And it was like, it was so weird because like, I talked about how I like value sleep, right? And we were up till like 12 in the morning, just like talking absolute rubbish.
The night before a game.
It was like a big game against New South Wales. And it was just like, it was really because they were like pretending to DJ, and they were like both making like all these sound. And it's so wild that this comes to mind, but it was just like, they were both just like doing these like DJ sounds, and then Regan would just be like kind of rapping, like making songs up, and like that's just how he was. And we were just like, I remember being like, you know when your belly hurts from like crying and laughter? I remember just crying, laughing like with those two guys, and that like, I'll never forget that moment because like anytime I think about him or like talk about, like even when like we talked about him earlier in this conversation, like that memory like still pops up for some reason, or even just like walking over to dinner in these camps, like he just like would always have something to say, like always like he'd always just be like making these fun little things. Incredible, man. Yeah, mate, I can't thank you, but these last questions, this whole podcast, man, this has been like probably like definitely my most favorite podcast that I've been on.
Oh, I really appreciate that.
I may have fucking done the rounds.
Yeah, I know, and I do really appreciate you coming on because I know you've done the rounds in a few, and I know you're super busy. But that's the thing. Like I want to give you your flowers because you're definitely a massive motivator and inspiration for what I'm doing too. Like I always look at what you're doing, and I'm like, man, Keegan's the man. Like everyone that I've spoken to about you have said the same thing. Such a good, genuine, down-to-earth person, and you're just someone that I really admire, to be honest with you. And I've admired you when you were playing footy, but it's what you're doing now, the space you're in now, and the work that you're doing now is something that I really admire and something that I really look up to. So I appreciate everything you're doing. I appreciate you coming on. It's easily one of my favorites too.
Well, mate, thank you. I can't thank you enough. First of all, for having me on, but also like creating like this like safe space. I think that's super important. And like, you know, when people are being genuine, man, like, and even like when we first met, like people hit me up to do podcasts all the time.
Yeah.
And like 90% of the time I'm saying no.
Yeah.
But when we first met, I was just like, nah, this guy's like super genuine, and that's why, to be honest, that's why. Like,
I appreciate that.
So I know it's coming from a good place, and I know that you're doing this because you genuinely care. And so, man, I can't thank you enough. Keep doing what you're doing, man, because you're gonna move the needle.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Mind Your Head. If you'd like to support the show, be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcasts. It really supports the show and helps others discover us. Don't forget to join us on Instagram and TikTok at mindyourhead.podcast.